All right, so I'm going to call the Southborough Capital Planning Committee to order Monday, February 22nd, 2021. It is 7:32 p.m. Pursuant to Governor Baker's March 12, 2020 order suspending certain provisions of open meeting law, General Law, Chapter 38, Section 18, and the Governor's March 15, 2020 order imposing strict limitation on the number of people that may gather in one place. This meeting of the Southborough Capital Planning Committee will be conducted via remote participation to the greatest extent possible. Specific information in the general guidelines for remote participation by members of the public and/or parties with a right and/or requirement to attend this meeting can be found on the Town of Southborough's website at www.southboroughtown.com. For this meeting, members of the public who wish to watch or participate in the meeting may do so in the following manner by finding the meeting at www.southboroughtown.com/remote meetings. No in-person attendance of members of the public will be permitted, but every effort will be made to ensure that the public can adequately access the proceedings in real time via technological means. In the event they were unable to do so, despite our best efforts, we will post on Southborough's website an audio video recording transcript or other comprehensive record of proceedings as soon as possible after the meeting. Right. So Lisa will be here around 8-ish is my expectation, but we obviously have a quorum, so we're going to keep moving. On the meeting minutes themselves, which is item 2, do people have small changes, substantive changes? I'm just trying to decide whether we push this to the end of the meeting or we knock it out now. So just looking for just a general sense before deciding how to proceed, structurally with the meeting.
I think mine are small.
Okay. Anyone have any material significant changes? All right, so let's go in order first. So the January 25th, 2021 minutes. Kathy, you want to go first?
Okay, page 2, under 5. Mrs. Landry, second paragraph down, Mrs. Landry, you're just missing a word there, stated, the library. So add the word stated between Landry and B.
On February 8th.
So are we doing the 25th or the 8th?
Yeah, Kathy, I think you're on. I was going to say, I don't think Margaret was here that night. Are you on the 8th?
Yeah,
I think there might be a titling issue.
There is a title. So I'm looking, it says January 25th on the minutes I'm looking at. So I'm looking at the wrong minute, I guess, but it does say January 25th. Okay.
Yeah, so that was
I'm on the wrong ones then. I'm on the ones for the next week.
Okay. All right. So on the January 25th meeting, those are the ones we passed on last time. Does anyone have any comments, questions on those?
I sent a couple of minor things, Joe, to you, just typographic.
Yeah, there were 2 question marks of things that I was hoping somebody would catch and know what it was about.
Okay, so do you want to draw everyone's attention to those, Joe, just so we're all on the same page?
All right, let's see.
I'm doing a Control F as we speak because I don't remember.
ISSO is one of them.
Is it under fire?
Yeah.
My guess is 1S. And then what was the second one, Joe? Down under the documents referenced during the meeting. Did we reference the 2013 report? I don't recall that, but we may have, Kathy.
It was.
I don't know.
just
I'm
briefly
lost. Where are we?
at the bottom of the minutes of January
Documents
25th.
referenced.
That's a minute. So what page? What section?
Just the
Literally
bottom.
the last, page 17.
9?
Yeah, there was I believe it was a 2013. The question mark was relating to the year. You
It is
referenced
13.
the last report, and so I
Okay.
just made make sure that I got the year right.
Okay.
Other than that, the other question mark, you said 1S?
1S in ISO, yes, for ISO rating. Any other comments on those ones? All right, so I will move, Jeff, and yours were grammatical in nature or content?
I think most of them are grammatical. I guess maybe the only question I had was, or only couple of questions, sorry. On page 4, the second paragraph, Mrs. Cook expressed that the way forward towards the finished report was to get the errors corrected and questions answered and see what it projects then. The next part, Mr. Malinowski added that the school has a new software package that will try to help the school get more students back in the schools more days of the week. I don't remember that.
Yes.
Okay, that was, okay.
Yeah, so basically there's a software that they're using to figure out how much space they can put between desks when they open up more.
Okay,
So
got
we're
it.
going to be able to leverage that for the now using the enrollment data. So,
All right, and the next question, there was 2 paragraphs down. Mrs. Cook said that Mr. Martin was confident with the repurpose of Neary. It might be possible to 4 grades over in here. Did you mean Woodward, Kathy, on that? I can't recall exactly what was said.
Say it again.
It says Mrs. Cook said that Mr. Martin was confident with a repurpose of Neary that it might be possible to put 4 grades over at Neary instead of
Yeah,
just.
I meant Neary.
Okay,
that makes sense.
okay. Yeah, that's all I really had. That's all I had.
Okay.
It was.
Anything from anyone else?
I know this one was a big gulp. Sorry, guys.
It was indeed.
Joe, everyone appreciates you doing the minutes, right? So,
Sort of, yes.
no, well, it obviously took you a lot of time to do this. So we're trying to help you.
Yeah. This was just, there was a lot of stuff in this meeting too.
Yeah.
It just was.
All right. So the only other item I'll
I
have,
apologize.
the only other thing I'll add is there's 2 thes in when I called the meeting to order. So I'll just delete that. The agenda, middle of page 1. Did you have something else, Jeff?
I'm sorry. I did have one more thing on section 8. Did we say it would likely reduce the members and advisory members on the capital planning committee? Is that true? Okay. Sorry, there was a lot said at that meeting. Okay, that's all.
All right. I will move that we accept the minutes with the previously mentioned edits during this discussion. Is there a second?
A second.
Second.
All right. Second by Kathy. Any further discussion? All right. Roll call vote. Cook,
Aye.
Hark,
Aye.
Interneater.
I'll abstain because I wasn't present.
Okay. Palmer.
Aye.
Pfaff.
Right.
And Malinowski is aye. So that is 501. All right. Kathy, you're up on February 8th. Other than the header.
I changed the February 8th already.
All right. Where do you want to go next, Kathy?
All right, let's go to section 5 and Mrs. Landry. So second paragraph.
Yep, I put stated in for you.
Stated, that's all you gotta do. Okay, great. Next page, let's see, this is still section 5, this is section A. Next page. Second paragraph, second sentence, where you see 5 to 6 cruisers due to a change to 3 officer. Oh God, I can't remember what I wrote.
Yeah. No, I know where you're talking about. Yes.
Okay, 3 officer per shift. So it's
Okay,
not
yeah.
3 officer minutes, it's per shift. So I just want to make sure that's clear because that's important. That's
Sure, yep.
key to what we did there. Okay, keep going. Go over to, so it's the same section. So it's C, but the second page of C. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5th paragraph down that starts with the word discussion.
Yep.
Okay, third sentence. Authorization does not fund the item. So don't put budget, put fund the item. Because the warrant article does budget it. It just doesn't fund it until you actually
Yep.
fund
Got
it.
it.
Okay. All right, now the last sentence I don't understand. The current capital planning committee represents BOS advised. Oh, okay. I know I do. And outward parties. The current. Okay, now I don't again. The current capital planning committee represents.
I think it should say consists of
Okay.
BOS advisory in town finance team members. I think would accomplish the intent of what that was trying to say.
Okay,
Yes,
all right.
I will put member, I'll reword.
You know what
say
threw me, which I'm wrong, was the BOS. Of course, Lisa's BOS. That's what was throwing me. So I agree, BOS
The
is,
current capital planning committee consists of BOS and advisory members and town managers to carry the intent to outward parties.
I would say town finance team members.
Okay,
okay, let's keep going.
Yep.
Next page, subparagraph E. The school committee raised capital items with advisory, not BOS.
okay,
If they've raised it with BOS, I'm not aware of it.
You're right, Kathy. That's right.
All right, and keep on that paragraph. This is trivia. Let's see for.
Yep.
Okay, are using rent receipts to pay for one of them. They think they
Okay.
can pay for one of the parking lots through their rent revolving fund. So one of them.
okay.
I thought that was important. All right, almost done.
Yep.
Okay, go to paragraph or section 6, members report. And don't be mad at me, Joe, but PERC is PERC. Instead of PRK. It's
Okay.
It's short for
In
percolate.
6, oh, South Union, right there.
yes, it's B.
PERC, gotcha.
Yes, John Rooney would be mad if you heard me do that.
All good.
Okay, so sorry, I just have
Next.
to be a speller. Okay, that's it.
Okay,
I did notice that Steve's last name was spelt wrong in a few places. I don't know, Steve, if you noticed that. So if you could just do a quick check on that, Joe, before sending over the final ones.
Does it have the M
Particular-
in there instead of the N?
While under adjournment is section 12, for example, it's Henternetter is how it's spelled.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
And
Oh,
you,
it's spelled with it's HEN?
No, it's HIN.
yeah, you have it right. 98.
In most places, you have it correct.
Yeah.
So Steve, when you see your name on the screen on Zoom, the R and the N run together, so it does look like an M. So if you hear people saying M, that's why. Now, maybe it's my bad eyes, but it really does run together.
HINPER.
That's okay. I don't think that's how he misspelled it. Yeah.
I'll look through it again, and make sure the name's correct.
All right. Does anyone else have anything to add?
I have a couple of things if anyone else.
Go ahead, Jeff.
So first, Steve's not listed as voting members present at the top, so we should add him.
Yeah. Yep, I caught that too, yeah.
Okay. Spelling on page 1 would be more versatile.
Page 1.
Yeah, section 5A, the first is the.
Oh, okay.
Um,
Oh, would be, yep.
So just going across part, what is it, D of discussion of police cruisers. So we have differing vote totals in the Excel, Jason, that you provided versus what's in the minutes.
We didn't vote on the police cruisers.
The committee voted 5-1-1 by roll call to approve the motion. This is fire capital items to be funded by Harvard Fund. I didn't mean to say police, I meant fire. We have 601 in the Excel.
Yeah, I didn't go. Yeah, okay. The minutes are probably accurate. This was me going through the meeting, so.
Okay, yep. And then 601 for the next page on the prioritization versus 7-0.
Prioritization. Motion for the, wait a minute, the equipment
Yeah, so
trailer.
Jeff, these aren't minute comments. These are for other.
I wasn't sure, they're not consistent. I wasn't sure which was right. Let's see, and then the other thing I had was adjournment, just the time. I think it was like around 10:30.
It definitely was 10:30.
10:30.
I think it was
I almost
10:42.
had to sleep in my office. I was so tired.
All right,
10:42.
Steve's saying 10:42.
No,
We made a memorable first impression.
No, I don't remember the exact time.
All right,
That's it.
okay.
All right,
Jeff, I will cross-check those. I'll make sure the sheet cross-checks to the minutes once we're done tonight.
Okay.
I didn't have the minutes when I did the sheet, full disclosure, so.
10:42 in there.
Okay. Any other comments for Joe?
Only other one I had that everybody else didn't get was on the first page, Joe, Southborough. I think it needs an H.
Oh, I think I caught that one already.
Okay, that was the only other one.
I found one or two after I sent.
Cool.
Sorry.
No worries.
All right, I will move that we accept the minutes with the prior conversation and edits included. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Andrew. Any further discussion? All right, roll call. Cook,
Aye.
Hawk,
Aye.
Interneater,
Aye.
Palmer,
Aye.
Bath,
Aye.
and Malinowski is aye. So that is 6-0. Next one, item 3 on the agenda, approve release of executive session meeting minutes from December 14th, 2020. This was simply the meeting where we approved meeting minutes from a prior executive session. The Board of Selectmen have already done something very similar with their meeting minutes, where they approved the meeting minutes from a prior conversation. So I thought we should be consistent. I talked to Mark about this. So the vote here is just going to be to approve release of those minutes, which really talk about minutes from another meeting that are still under kind of executive session privilege. Does everyone understand what we're going to be voting on before I move it? All right. I didn't hear anyone say no. So I am going to move that we approve the release of the executive session meeting minutes from December 14th, 2020. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Joe. Is there any discussion? All right, roll call vote. Cook,
Aye.
Hark,
Aye.
Interneater,
Abstain.
Palmer,
Aye.
Pfaff,
Aye.
and Malinowski is aye. So that is 5-0-1. I am going to skip item 4 just in interest of time to allow Chief Achilles to speak to his items. So I'm going to bring him in, and please, someone remind me to come back to that if I miss it at any point. Hi, Chief.
Hey, good evening, everybody.
How are you?
Excellent, thank you.
So it was only 5 minutes off my estimate, so thanks for bearing with us. Chief, I have brought you up to speed on the discussion from the last meeting. The committee was very open to having you come back to discuss the chief's vehicle, so I'm going to skip to 5I on the agenda. And maybe what I'll do is give you the floor to outline your latest thinking and then open it to the committee for questions.
All right, thank you, everybody, and good evening. On the replacement vehicle, just a background, last year, this was approved. And unfortunately, due to the town meeting being abridged, it was moved to the special meeting. So when we went into this year, we thought we would already have the vehicle, but that's not the case. In preparation and moving up the replacement of the 2012 Explorer, we moved out the 2008 pickup truck out to 2023. So moving and coming into this year, we had made already adjustments in our fleet maintenance and replacement program in anticipation of moving forward with the replacement vehicle that we're asking for again this year. Also in preparation, understanding that there was some unique challenges in the capital, and I appreciate what the capital committee has done for the fire department. We look to reduce our capital request by using some Harvard funds. So you probably, if you don't see it already, IV pumps of $12,000 we purchased out of Harvard funds, so that's off. We did not get the SCBA grant, so there's $13,000 that we won't be requesting. And we were able to replace the cylinders that we were requesting for $10,000. So our request in total would be dropped by about $35,000 from our original request. Understanding that was other things that got moved around and moved up and reprioritized, which we appreciate that. So the idea for this vehicle is to stay within the $60,000 budget. We did investigate an opportunity to lease purchase. There's a vendor that does that, and it was around 6% to lease purchase. So that's something this committee and finance is going to decide, is lease purchase a better option, or with the funds available in the town, do we just purchase the vehicle? But our hope is to move forward on this. Any vehicle we get, typically will, unless we can get it off a lot, will take 4 months to put in service. I think all of you are aware that we've been a little busy over the last couple of weeks, and these vehicles are used. They were used on Framingham Road the other day, also during the snowstorms. So I think it's important, and I think we spoke to this last year about how important a reliable SUV is. It's something that needs to be in service and designed the right way so we can make use of it, not just for driving on non-emergency calls, but emergency calls. So that's the background on the vehicle. That our intent is to, I'd like to see support for it so that we can move forward. I'm concerned if it doesn't move forward, that next year we're going to start log jamming the vehicle replacement program. And, we've been trying to keep that 2008 pickup truck on the road, which we have been, but it's already 2 years beyond our replacement. So that's what I have, and I'll answer any questions.
I'm thinking, unless anyone objects, while we have the chief, we should ask him about the need, if you have questions related to the need. I think the discussion of purchase versus lease, and if that's going to inform anyone's vote, we can defer the vote until we talk about the cruisers too. I think that's more of a broader discussion that, Chief, you're welcome to stay for, but I would prefer to focus, well, at least whatever time we have of yours, on the need, and if any people are questioning the timing, cost, or anything related to the actual having the item in the right spot on the plan, and then we can decide with Mark and Brian, what's the best path forward. Does anyone object to that? Okay, so I'm not going to go around the horn. I'm just going to open it up and see if anyone has any questions for the chief that you haven't asked in the past, or anything you want to reinforce.
So essentially, we need to buy a pickup truck next year if we don't buy it this year. Is that what we're
So
getting
that's
at?
an additional vehicle, Joe. I mean, we're trying to get a SUV this year replacement, and then in doing so, we moved out the replacements of a pickup truck out a couple years.
Yeah.
As we keep on putting off the SUV, pretty soon they're going to log jam, and we're going to need 2 in 1 year. And I would prefer not to do that if we could.
And Chief, what year is the pickup truck?
Pickup truck's a 2008.
Okay. And Chief, the leasing quote that you talked about, that was just for your vehicle. So it was a $60,000 expenditure.
It was for the whole project. We know that much like a cruiser, the vehicle would be a stock vehicle, and then the installation of radio and emergency lighting. So we got some estimates that it would be up to $60,000. We didn't pick a specific vendor. I'm hesitant to do that until we know we have confirmation of funds.
Yep. But that was a 6% interest rate, you said?
Yeah, it was a little over 6%. I think the whole thing was either 62,000 or 64,000. It was like 6 point something percent.
What was the lease rate from the manufacturer or from an independent?
It was from the manufacturer.
Stick to need. We'll come back to leasing.
Yeah, I just wanted him to answer that one question. We'll go on leasing later, Jason. Chief, are you worried that the pickup truck might not make it till next year?
Right now, we will make it. We'll get it to next year. It's a support vehicle. It's used quite a bit by our crews in responding and post-scene pickup of equipment. It also is the utility to go back and forth to do errands on duty or go to the hospital. We just replaced the brakes on it and some of the rear end stuff. Again, I think priority wise, we can wait. I would just hate to see that we put off this SUV to next year. Now we're debating two vehicles. Both will have a significant need at that time.
Okay. The only other question I was thinking of is we're looking to replace the two pickups for the DPW, whether or not keeping one of those as a backup just in case until the new pickup comes.
That's I guess a fleet discussion with the DPW superintendent, but they've always been kind enough if we got stuck or our pickup was out of service to allow us to use a pickup.
Okay.
And just so I think to clarify, all our support vehicles, whether they're SUVs or pickups, we try to get them so that they can tow trailers. I think you all aware that we have numbered trailers for both SEMA and for the fire department and the police department. So that's why we go more towards a more robust vehicle than a car.
Andrew, is Karen going to trade the two diesel pickups in? That's what she's doing?
I honestly don't know whether that's what I was trying to see, if she's trading them in or I think she's replacing them, but
I think they're two different kinds of trucks.
They are.
You got a diesel pickup versus the Chief. Yours is gasoline, I'm assuming. Yours is like an F-350 is, or
yeah, you know what? I apologize, but I believe it's I thought it was a diesel also, but I could be wrong.
but I think it's two different bodies, right?
And again, I didn't want to have the discussion on the pickup if we could help it. I wanted in context, make sure that
It's coming.
it's coming and we've been putting it off, understanding that we didn't want to put a lot of pressure on the capital budget over the last couple of years.
Yep.
Fair enough.
Andrew, anything else?
Nope.
Any other members? Are people comfortable voting now, or you want to have a broader discussion about leasing before we vote?
I'd want to wait.
Let's have the leasing discussion.
Okay. So Chief, I don't know when that's going to be, but it's probably not going to be for a little bit because we got to talk about cruisers too. So I guess before the chief leaves, are there any questions on the items we haven't reaffirmed our vote on from earlier this year for him for next year, which would be thermal imaging cameras, hose and nozzle replacement, PPE, and ambulance before we let him go?
Jason, why is the ambulance there?
Because we voted on it.
Yeah, but what year is it?
It's a authorization to purchase this year. It
Okay,
won't
but,
hit the tax rate
all right,
until
so that's why it's in the ambulance fund next year as far as the money coming out. Okay, so I
Yeah.
was confused about why we're saying, okay.
So I should be clear. There's slightly over $1,000 that I think Brian is carrying for short-term interest in the budget, but I think it hits the ambulance fund, not the general fund.
Well, there's
in
nothing,
FY22.
there's nothing right now coming out of the ambulance fund for fiscal year 22, except for the debt service on engine 23. So everything else has been taken out of it with the copy I saw this morning.
Yeah, so the question is going to be how exactly that times out. So you'd be looking at a max, I think, of that, I think, Brian, let me just open the sheet to give the precise amount. You're carrying potentially 1354 of funds for short-term interest, depending upon when the delivery and payment needed to be made. Assuming
That's going through the general fund right now.
it's gonna go to the ambulance fund, but we have to vote to approve it, then it'll go on the ambulance fund spreadsheet is the intent. Because an ambulance is purchased out of the ambulance fund.
But the 1354 is now in the general fund debt service, correct? Or not?
I don't think so, but I'm gonna let Brian, Brian has all his sheets that go far beyond capital, so I don't want to answer that.
Are we talking the budget, in the budget right
Yeah,
now?
are you carrying $1,354 for the short-term interest on the ambulance if we were to purchase it in FY '22?
I don't think I put it in yet, Jason.
I don't think you
Because-
did either, and I thought you were saying it was, so I know it's not in there. Okay, so that settles that. So my only question on all the chief's other request is the fire PPE for fiscal year '22. Is that are you going to spend the 40, or is that where we're trying to get the fund started so you've got a fund that you can draw from?
What we identified is that we would need a minimum of $40,000 to start the protective gear replacement. We identified that we would need somewhere between $100,000 and $120,000. Instead of asking all in 1 year, we spread it out over 3 years. So this year we need that amount, and I believe the same amount for next year. It's when we get out in the out years, the third and fourth year, we'll be able to determine how much do we need at that point, what gear needs to be replaced.
Chief, can I just confirm the statement that the 40,000 represents 10 sets of gear that to be expiring under NFPA, regulations next year? So basically, you're going to probably draw that amount down unless one of those members were to leave.
That's what I'm asking. Are you going to spend it? It sounds like the answer is yes. I'm going to
Yes.
spend it. Okay. All right. That's it for me.
Any other questions on the fire items from a need perspective? Lisa, we're going to talk about lease versus buy later, so we're going to hold off on a vote for now. But I just wanted to be cognizant of the chief's time. All right, going once. Going twice. All right, Chief, I appreciate you joining and being
Thank you,
flexible with your
everybody.
schedule.
Appreciate your consideration and having a safe night.
All right, thanks. All right. While it's fresh on our minds, I'd prefer to do a leasing discussion now because I think it probably impacts how people are thinking about the cruisers potentially. And then what we'll do is we'll take a vote on the fire and police items and then come back up through my agenda. Does that make sense? All right. I'm going to share what I have learned. Brian, I'd ask you share what you've learned, and Andrew will share what he has learned. My understanding is back in 2019, when the Board of Selectmen were dealing with a very similar discussion around police cruisers in a huge budget crisis, looking to streamline funds, Chief Paulus looked into leasing the 2 cruisers that were going to be purchased in that year. Again, he looked at it in quote unquote a silo of what his need was without looking at the other capital needs. That's going to be important for some of the stuff I'm sure Andrew's going to want to talk through. That interest rate was somewhere north of 7%. I'm not even going to go find what the number was. I just think that speaks to itself of why that path never got any sort of traction. You heard the fire chief just discussed his 6%, but that was literally going through a potential vendor for 1 vehicle. We also asked Chief Paulus to do the same thing. If he were to get 2 cruisers funded at town meeting, what potential leasing options would there be? That document is in our folder as well, but I'll just summarize it because I just added it this morning. But you recall we're carrying currently $101,000 for outfitting 2 cruisers. The interest rate or I guess the APR, I guess is probably the more proper term, ranges over a 3, 4, or 5-year term to somewhere between 4.75 and 4.79%. That's with or without a down payment. So it adds thousands of interest to every year, right? So the rates certainly have come down, but even you can see fire chief looking at one vehicle, police chief looking at another, various different rates. So I'm going to pause there. That's what I know. Brian, is there anything you would add on the history before, Andrew presents kind of more his bigger picture, looking across department view?
No, nothing on the history. I do think the timing is interesting though, if you think about it, because the lease you have to appropriate. And so we'd be adding money into the budget for FY '22. Because right now I have no debt for FY '22 for these items. So you're gonna actually have to add any kind of leasing obligation for FY '22. So just keep that in mind.
But aren't you carrying the full cost right now, though, as an appropriation? So when it has
Not for the, well, for the, have we decided? Sorry.
Yes,
Have we
yes,
just-
you are. You got
Well-
$101,000 in there.
Yeah, we decided, I'm sorry, I should have made myself clear. Have we decided on the hook truck though? The hook truck, we're going to appropriate the full amount?
don't go to the hook truck yet.
Okay.
Just we'll get the
Then,
go. We'll go.
then strike what I said.
Yeah. So police and fire, though, it technically would be
You're right, they're
a
appropriate.
short-term savings, but
Right.
clearly a much larger, longer-term cost over 3 years or 4 years or 5 years. That's
Yeah,
but
my
that's just good.
No. My only other comment would be that, yeah, it appears that just doing like the cruisers on their own or doing the fire truck on its own probably doesn't make a whole lot of sense. I mean, the numbers didn't look to be, it was kind of a push as I saw it, if anything. But the 400,000 might be a little bit different story. But
All right. So Andrew, you're on.
You can
What
take
did you
it from there.
Oh, yeah. So I went to a couple different options, and so talked to one company that specializes in this, and I think it's what Brian kind of alluded to. For just 100,000 for the police, their rates were 4.14, 3.98, and 3.96 for 4, 5, and 6 years. So a little bit lower than the 6 or the 7% that we were talking about. And then I also did an option of including the chief's vehicle plus the hook lift truck, which brings it to about 400,000. And obviously, when I'm talking to them, the more you do, the better the rate you get. At 400,000 is 1.9%. And then I just got another quote back about 30 seconds ago. 5-year 2.14% and a 6-year 2.2%, and that was at 160K. So that was for the 2 police cars and the fire chief. So I don't know, Brian, where that, and most of these have a $600 fee for documentation, and that's it. So Brian, I don't know where we're if we take 400,000 as an example, where would we be from a bond rate plus a bond cost for, say, a 400,000, just for comparison's sake?
And the 400, Andrew, is a combination of what, and what?
So the 400 would be the police car, the police
Okay,
SUV,
Yep,
the fire command vehicle, plus the
160.
hook truck.
Okay, so that is 326.
And you could even include the 2 pickup trucks for the DPW as well, and that would get us to 500 and something thousand if we wanted to do that. But I'm just kind of putting options together to figure out what the rates would be. But
Andrew, the 1.9.
Yep.
What is the term for that? Is that
5
a
year.
5-year? It is. Okay. Thank
Yep.
you.
And what happens
Another-
at the end of year 5? We can take them, because obviously these are all going to be in our fleet for longer than 5 years. Maybe not the cruisers, but everything else.
Yep. And all these leases have what they call non-appropriation leases language, which means that if at town meeting in a subsequent year we didn't appropriate funding, it basically terminates the lease.
So Andrew, again,
Andrew,
single out-of-pocket fee is $600.
$687.
Okay.
Andrew, what about mileage on the police vehicles? Is there
No, because we own them when they're done, so there's no mileage restriction.
The $600 is a one-time fee, or is it per vehicle?
I think it's a one-time fee just for the lease. It's the legal and documentation.
So it's one single contract?
Correct. For either 2 or 4 vehicles, depending on how we do it.
Okay, can you do the interest rates just one more time?
So, okay, and I'll send it out to everybody. We just got it in late today. So for 2 vehicles, the 2 police vehicles, it's 4.15, 3.99, and 3.97, and that's a 4, 5, and 6 year. And on the $400,000, which is the 2 police vehicles, the command vehicle for fire, and the hook lift truck, that's just the 5-year option at 1.91%. And then for comparison, another company for $160,000 was 2.14% for a 5-year and 2.19% for a 6-year.
And the 160 is?
That was the 2 police and the fire command. And if we went up to like, 400,000 or 500,000 on that, it would knock off another 10 basis points, but not a huge change. But again, this is just different options. We can choose to do lower or more, or we can do different things, but just to kind of give us some insight into the numbers.
Are we able to, maybe this is a question I should really answer to, but you're talking about leasing here, but buying a car and just financing it through the manufacturer, is that the same thing, Brian, as bonding it? Because can't we just look into that as well? Because theoretically you get a lower interest rate than a lease. So if you bought Fords, for example, and just finance it through Ford.
Well, these aren't really leases. They really are financing.
Okay.
They refer to them as a lease more from a tax purpose, I think, Kathy, right? Because it's more of an operating lease or a municipal lease. But you're paying this down basically.
So it's like a note. Okay.
Like a note.
Okay.
But you just have the option every year to get out of it from an appropriation standpoint.
What does that mean?
In year 3, if the town decided not to appropriate the funds to pay for the lease, there's an out clause. I mean, I don't know what that would do to our bond rating. I don't suggest doing it, but that's part of the negotiation.
But you'd still have to pay the lease off at that point.
No, you give them the keys to the car.
So I think we've got to separate this. So I ran amortization schedules with the Republic proposal that I guess Chief Hollis got, and actually got different interest rates, but who cares? Mine were actually a little bit lower. So not sure why theirs were in the 4s, mine were in the 3s, but the police cars I still think are different from everything else. I think the hook lift truck is going to last, I don't know, several years. It's not going to be 3 years. And possibly her 2 pickup diesels too. So, if we were just looking at the 2 police cars, I don't know why we would do this, because we replace police cars so fast. If we started doing this on a regular basis, in the 3rd year, we're going to end up with the same amount of money we're spending with the leases because they turn over so fast. So I don't think the police cars made sense standalone. But when Andrew says we can do this at 1.91 with it all thrown in there.
Kathy, we could do the police probably at 2.15 or 2.2.
I thought the 191 includes the whole 400.
That's from a different company.
Okay, but so the whole 400, we can do
Yep.
400 for 1.91, including the 2 police cars, correct?
Correct.
Okay.
And then that company had 3.9 for just the police cars. And then another company is about 2.2 for the 160,000. So the 2 police cars and the chief's vehicle, but it's probably a similar rate if we wanted to do the 105 or whatever the police cars would be.
And we could do 4, 5, or 6 year leases with the 400?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think you can do however long you want. You could do 10-year, you could do whatever. I just threw 5 out there as an option.
Andrew, can I ask a question?
Sure.
And you may have answered this already, I apologize. So in terms of this versus the typical lease that you think of, you know, typically at the end of a lease, you know, there's a lot of potential fees or, you know, so so if I understand this correctly, in this type of lease, it's just like you said to Jeff, it's basically financing it out. You would
Correct.
own it at the end of the 5 years
Correct.
versus, okay.
Yep. So
So-
this is
so
what they
that-
call, this is what they refer to as lease to own. So there's no
Okay.
mileage charges, no money down, no lease end buyouts, no balloon.
Okay.
It's a finance lease in the accounting world.
It's
So
basically
we've got-
financing.
the entity that does this would actually put these assets on their books as assets and actually set up a liability to pay it. That's how you would record it on your accounting books. So it really is just a way to finance these assets, but 1.91 is pretty darn compelling. And we do have some longer lived assets we're talking about. It's a mixture. I would hate to see us lease police cars for 4 years. How many years do we think how many years does it take to get a police car up to 100,000 miles? We think?
Like 5 or 6, Jason.
Okay,
what you're-
all right, never mind. I thought it was less than that. So, okay. So I came into this meeting not thinking you were going to say what you did. And I thought it makes no sense for 2 police cars to do this because we're just going to end up in the 3rd year having the same amount of money being spent if we keep just doing at least every year for the new cars by the get to the 3rd year. But this for assets that are longer lived that's not the case. So I may be changing my mind.
Yeah, I too thought the rates are pretty good. And then the only other question I started to think about is whether or not some of these, for some of the smaller bonded items that we have in the capital plan, the ambulance or some of the other things, whether or not, you know, it might be more beneficial, but I'll defer that to Brian's expertise. I don't know what these rates are compared to what we were expecting on the bond pieces.
And you really told them what assets these were. So they'd be willing to take back a hook lift truck.
Yep, the lease specifically lists new hook truck, new Ford Expedition Fire Department command vehicle, new Ford Explorer with police upfits and equipment. Same with the fire upfits and equipment. Dodge Charger with police upfits and equipment.
So I guess,
Can I ask a question? If you're leasing this for 5 years and in 3 years, the economy tanks and, you know, rates are, you know, shoot through the roof, like, you know, I know this would be locked in, but when we go in 3 years to have to purchase new other vehicles, are we then going to be saddled with, you know, buying these new vehicles as well, full value on top of the payment values that we're doing through a lease?
Possibly.
or you have now entered yourself into more of a permanent leasing program.
Right.
Yeah. Most towns would, some of the towns that do this for a lot of their fleet basically set aside a certain amount in their budget every year as operating expenses for lease payments. And then it just keeps churning into that kind of funds. So you kind of lose that ebb and flow of big expenditures and then, you know, nothing for 5-6 years and big expenditures.
So, Brian, I'll let you and Mark react to any of this in a second, but I think where I'm at is I think we need to separate, like, if we truly believe that these needs are valid this year, whether it be police cruisers, fire chief vehicle, or hook lift or anything else, right? I think our first and foremost priority as the capital planning committee is to advance those for further conversation. And then I think second, regardless of whether we do this or not, I think everyone's probably sleeping a little better tonight, wherever you vote, to know that Mark and Brian and the rest of the town's finance team have options, right? If, you know, all of a sudden the governor changes his view on state aid or it doesn't pass, right? Like, or if we have factors that are beyond our control and we've bound ourselves to certain purchases, that they have levers to try to neutralize this if we did go just the appropriation route. And then all of a sudden, when these things come in 6 months from now, because remember, these aren't actually going to be assets, or a lease agreement's probably not going to be entered into for the next, probably another 10 months is my guess, if you went down this road. So I would say when when we take a vote, I would encourage that we do it in two paths. One is on the actual need and whether that this is the right time to do it. And then if anyone has strong views or recommendations related to the financial aspect of it, move that, and we'll take a pulse, because we are going to have a audience with the Board of Selectmen next Tuesday. At some point, we'll have an audience with advisory, right? So, and hopefully that whatever recommendations come out of this committee, there'll be the same level of support at BOS or advisory to help inform, what's the right path moving forward, right? So as many great minds as there are here tonight, right? Just tapping into that additional expertise that sits on those two boards, I think as well will be important. So does anyone disagree with that approach as we move forward through the rest of the discussion?
I don't disagree, but I would emphasize the first part. I still think that's our role tonight, is to say we are convinced for fiscal year 22, this is what we need to buy. And then certainly this has been very helpful to let the other committees who look at the overall budget look at ways they can mitigate the cost. But I still think our primary function is to say we have vetted this and we believe or not that we need for fiscal year 22 to buy these things, period.
So Brian, Mark, anything you want to add before we kind of go back to the actual capital need piece of this?
No, I think I appreciate Andrew's help. He did a good job, and I'm certainly open to the idea. Again, if it was just the smaller equipment, I'd probably say it's not even really worth it. But if the higher amount, it deserves at least more attention. I'll just leave it at that.
Yeah, I agree with Brian. I think it gives us another tool for the toolbox, depending on, where we find ourselves and where we're looking to get to in terms of the budget. So I appreciate the work that's been done.
Okay. Any other comments before I go back through some of these items and we take some votes? All right. So for purposes of discussion, I'm going to start with 5I. I'm going to move that the Capital Planning Committee support the fire chief's vehicle, car 20, in the amount of $60,000 for FY22. Is there a second?
Second.
How about discussion?
The only one, Jason, do we want to do these kind of like a consent agenda and hold ones that people want to discuss? Or do you want to?
So fair point. I'm doing this one because of the pulse check
Okay.
I did last time.
That's fair.
And I flagged this one and the cruisers, right, and a few others as warranting further discussion. We obviously had the chief come in. So I do plan to move some of the others together if people are okay with that, because otherwise we will be here all night. So I think it goes, regardless of where this motion goes, I think it goes to the care that this committee has taken with all of these items, right, to bring forward something that's responsible. And if anyone were to ever argue that the committee didn't spend the right amount of time on some of these items, I just would refer them back to all the tape and in the meeting minutes. So I think we should be proud of that, regardless of where any of these land. Any comments on Chief's vehicle? All right, I'm going to do a roll call. Braccio,
Aye.
Cook,
Aye.
Hark,
Aye.
Hinterneeder,
Aye.
Palmer,
Abstain.
Pfaff,
Aye.
and Malinowski is aye. So that is 601. Did I get that right?
Yep.
And just bear with me. I'm just going to log this as we go so that you can all keep me honest. All right. So I'm going to stick with fire department. Does anyone have a desire to separate their vote on J, which is thermal imaging cameras, K, nose and hose and nozzle replacement, L, fire PPE, and M, ambulance? So I'm going to move that we support these additional fire items, agenda items I, J, K, and L, and M. Sorry, J, K, L, and M. Is there a second?
Second.
Any further discussion? All right. Braccio,
Aye.
Cook,
Aye.
Park,
Aye.
Hinterneeder.
I'm going to abstain on this one. Well, I'm saying that because I understand the first three and I don't quite understand the ambulance.
Okay.
I didn't get myself up to that.
We will definitely bring you up to speed. Happy to chat about it. Or find the meeting minutes as well from whatever meeting we previously discussed that. Joe,
Aye.
Faf,
Aye.
and Malinowski's aye. So that is another 601. All right. So do people want to do the cruisers next, and then we'll go to more of a consent? Or you want to move some of these together? There are some we're going to have to talk about individually, but
I would do the cruisers on its own.
all right. So for purpose of discussion, I'm going to move that we support the purchase of 2 police cruisers for $101,000 for FY22. Is there a second?
Second.
Any further discussion? All right, roll call. Braccio,
Aye.
Cook,
Nay.
Park. It was an aye, Jeff. I didn't hear it.
Aye. There's an aye.
Hinterneeder,
Aye.
Palmer,
Aye.
Pfaff,
Aye.
and Malinowski is aye. So that is 6-1-0, right? I had 1 no, I had no abstains.
Right.
All right. Let's go to MIS agenda item N. So I'm going to read. You'll notice that number is now 40,000. It was 90,000. Mr. Probst from the MTC, and I did listen to the section of the meeting where they discussed it. They had extensive conversation about Tom's original request, specifically as it related to some of the suggestions that Mr. Butler had sent in an email, which I believe the chain was included most members of capital planning, advisory, and MTC. Mr. Probst was also able to get access to data of how the town uses servers, so that they could all talk about them as members of that committee, what they were seeing. So I'm just going to read an email that he sent to Mark, and I was copied on. Actually, it was to both of us, I guess. Hi, Jason and Mark. I spent 30 minutes with Tom last night collecting resource usage statistics off of our existing servers to refine the quote for replacement servers. I then went to Dell.com to get pricing for replacement servers and storage to meet our requirements. The server package I put together a quote for meets, I'm just reading verbatim, for meets the full redundancy requirements that we've been lacking. It also provides about 20% more resources than we are currently using. It includes 5 years of break-fix support from Dell. The MTC discussed this tonight, and we added a buffer for potential software licenses and implementation services. The total comes out to $45K rather than the $75K line item previously in the budget. It was actually 90, but that's my interjection. Note, the MTC recommends putting $45K in the budget, but would want to work closely with the next town IT manager to work on a more strategic plan. For example, we'd recommend moving the current non-critical virtual machines to the cloud and leave only the critical public safety, phone system, and security-related virtual machines on local servers. This would mean we could further lower the cost of replacement physical servers, as the resource requirements for fewer virtual machines would be lower. There would be some cost with hosting virtual machines in the cloud, but likely would not be as much as the cost equivalent of on-prem. Then let me know if you have any questions. Now, you'll remember I said 40K, and you're probably like, he just read 45K multiple times. Mark weighed in on this, and part of it would be just yearly licenses. 5K of that 45K is yearly licenses. That's going to have to be handled via appropriation, not like a capital article that sits out there for 5 years. So that's really what gets you from the 45 down to the 40. So really what they are looking for is 40K to up to 40K. It sounds like there are options, and maybe that we may appropriate it and then there may be a turn back to replace the servers that need to be replaced that they know need to stay in terms of physical. But obviously this thing has been more than cut in half. So they don't have a meeting with us tonight. But I guess, does anyone need more information to be able to inform a vote? To me, it was cut and dry of where they were trying to go. In listening to the discussion, of which I understood about every third word about what they were talking about, I can assure you, at least I feel, that it got the right amount of attention from people that know a heck of a lot more about that than I do. So that's my 2 cents, but would welcome thoughts from the rest of you.
I wish we'd seen the email before we started tonight, so we'd have a chance to really absorb it. So I want to see that email again. So I'm not ready to vote tonight. I know you want to be ready for Board of Selectmen, but with MPC coming to advisory on Wednesday, there's still questions I think to be answered, and there's some people coming that night that I think are going to add a little bit more flavor to this. So I'm not ready to vote on this one.
I think I'd have to agree with Kathy on the timing wise. Mark, do you know of any imminent, my concern is doing a project like this without a director here. Does it need to be done next fiscal year? Could we wait one more year when we get somebody here that then has some time under their belt to understand our current systems, or is it really of imminent demise?
I could answer that question, Andrew. I wouldn't be hiring an IT manager. So
To the best of your knowledge, they're not on fire right now. Okay.
yeah, well, we've been very fortunate. Nothing's on fire right now. So yeah.
I'm more also concerned about putting together a server migration without an IT director that understands them. So that's more of a timing concern on my part. I think Jeff.
Yeah, no, I agree. What about, did we get any other quotes besides Dell? Mark, do you know?
No, I think that was all that Matt Probst had come back with. I think that IT manager probably is going to do a little bit more legwork. I think that Matt was just trying to prove that we didn't need what we were asking for initially, and it could be reduced, fairly significantly.
Okay, that's fair. Thank you.
Any other commentary? I think the question for this is, I don't know that we're going to have an IT manager before, necessarily we need to formulate a plan, and Mark needs to draft a warrant and all of that. So obviously, Kathy, I know you mentioned the joint discussion on Wednesday night, which some of us will be party to. Obviously, anyone else is welcome to watch, right? But how do we want to land on this, knowing, is it just we have a few additional questions, or do we leave it open until we get an IT manager and carry it as long as we can and pull it at the last minute if we're not comfortable? I think we certainly need to carry it until we remove it. I'm not hearing anyone say they want to remove it. I'm very happy that the number has come down by a significant amount. I think we all know it probably could go down more based on just what I read, but I just want to be fair to not set the new IT manager up with no funding if he or she thinks that it's needed. But at the same time, we have obviously our due diligence to do.
So I agree, Jason. I'm not saying take it off here. I think it stays. I just don't want to vote on it yet. And we've got time because of the delayed town meeting. We've got time to figure this out. So I'm not saying pull it off here. I just I've got more to understand here before I'm ready to vote on this one.
Yeah, I'm with Kathy on that as well. And I think we were fortunate that we have extra time because of town meeting delayed. That I'll certainly be tuning in to advisory and hopefully, getting my questions answered there.
So we're going to meet with him just to not waste anybody's time at 7:30 on Wednesday. We're doing Board of Health first, and then we're doing MPC at 7:30. They've got a full committee coming. And I think John Butler is going to be there too. So it should be interesting. So hopefully everybody else could tune in too. And then maybe next time we'll be ready to vote.
So Mark, I keep hearing we have time, but I'm looking at a calendar and it's going to be March 2nd, next week when the Board of Selectmen meet on this. So can you, like on this particular item, I think we really need to make sure we hone in on a date that we either saying yay or nay by. Are you comfortable throwing out something tonight? Because then obviously our vote is just the first vote, right? Like there's two other votes in terms of BOS and advisor that have to occur, and it holds up the rest of everything else we're discussing here.
Well, I agree. The term "we have time" makes me nervous because everybody says we have time and then we don't, because everyone, takes their foot off the accelerator and, we just coast for a little while and then it's a crisis at the end. The goal is still for the selectmen to post, the final wording of the warrant and sign that final warrant on April 20th. I know that the selectman chair has not set a kumbaya session yet with advisory to sit and talk budget. Selectmen have not taken their positions yet. Advisory has not taken their financial positions yet. So we don't know what we agree on and what we don't agree on at this point. So I would, capital, it would be great to have capital finalized, because then, we have something that is a constant and that everybody, tends to agree on in the budget, so that really we're focusing on certain aspects of the operating budget at that point. But
Can I offer a suggestion, Jason?
Go ahead.
So we're having a joint meeting with the BOS next Tuesday. Can't we just take a vote on this? Give everyone the opportunity to watch advisory, get your questions asked, take a 2-second vote. If this is going to be the only outstanding item, and
yeah, because I think, that goes, so Lisa, that's a great point. So it's going to go to the question of, I'm obviously going to have to come up with some sort of slides for the presentation, whether the committee wants to meet to approve those slides or not, because you could do it there too, right? Like even regardless of whether it's 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 30 minutes, I'll defer to all of you, but I think that's, probably the right way to go, just to land it. I mean, my guess is all the questions should, at least if we can get all the questions out on the table. And I guess what I would ask those that are not on advisory that have questions, those that have questions here, to either send them to Mr. Probst and have him address them, is probably the easiest way to do it.
I think that's a great plan, Lisa. So Jason, just for your slides, keep the 40 in there because that's the worst case scenario, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then we can update the Board of Selectmen if we've had more thoughts by the time the joint meeting starts.
Agreed.
Can I ask when the last time we had a server upgrade was? I don't know if Mark knows that.
I do not, but I can find out for you.
Mark, it's probably in the memo that Tom would have submitted to the committee last year. I can go back and find it.
I can probably get you the answer before then, Jason.
I'm sure. Got it.
I guess the reason I asked the question is because I'm inclined to just vote on $40,000. That's very simple money for a server system to upgrade it. The 90,000 was a pretty big number, but we're talking about replacement of vehicles and maintenance of those. This is what we're talking about, is a maintenance of a server system. And that's exactly what, the letter that you just read indicated, that it's making it robust. It's putting information that we don't need sitting, on someone's desk up in the cloud for storage. So it's actually optimizing it and bringing it up. So I'm inclined to have a vote on it. And you're talking about one of the smallest numbers on this entire list here.
So Steve, that's great. But I think it's a bigger thing than $40,000. What MTC alluded to with Matt's email is that they do now agree that it's time to move us to the cloud to the extent we can. And it sounds like they do believe we can't move everything to the cloud. There's certain systems, emergency, police, fire, whatever, that have to stay on a local server. So I just want to, because there's people in the town that think we should totally be on the cloud and that it can all be moved. So that's why I want to have this meeting Wednesday night and really flush that piece of it out. So it's more than just buying a server. It's really this philosophy that we really are going to try to move as much as we can to the cloud so we don't have to worry about things crashing here, and hopefully will save us some money over time.
So one of the things I just want to avoid is committees and residents and people with our best interests at heart making decisions that are the decisions of the IT manager. And so I want to make sure that we're not setting all of this up and making all of these decisions and then, you know, kind of to Steve's point, hamstringing the new person a little bit, that all of these things have already been done and, you know, they may not agree with you know, with things that have been set in motion.
Yeah, I think this is the good and the bad of town meeting, right? Is we're only guaranteed one town meeting a year, right? So not having that person in place, right? Trying to set him or her up for success and allow them some financial ability to make decisions, while at the same time doing what our job is, right? Of evaluating these things. So I'm gonna move on from this. I think we have a good plan. Thank you all for the feedback, and hopefully we'll be in a good spot maybe next week.
Jason, I've got to
that
make one more comment though. MTC was formed for this purpose. There's some really, really bright guys on that committee. I mean, really bright. And you got a Harvard PhD. So, you know, I think we really got to listen to what they recommend as far as the way we should approach the future as far as our IT program. So it's not just a, you know, committee that doesn't have, it's got a lot of expertise on it, and that's why it was formed. So I think that their opinion should drive what we do.
Well, their opinion was they were set up to advise the IT manager and to provide resources for him to, you know, to help him craft certain decisions. So I just want to make sure that those things aren't being done in a vacuum simply because we don't have an IT manager in the position right now. And by the way, the server, the last time we replaced a server was about 4 years ago.
Thank you.
All right, I'm going back up to the top of item 5. Going to DPW. Does anyone have any comments on A, chipper, B, hook lift, C, 2 pickups, 1 out of the general fund, 1 out of the water fund, and D, road maintenance?
Just a question, Jason, were any of those discussed when I wasn't?
No, we went right to the
Budget
chief's
is-
vehicle.
Okay, thank you.
So I think the only to-do I had on my list was, Andrew, I think you were going to talk to Karen. I think Kathy made a recommendation about the sheet that Karen has about the proper amount for road maintenance and that the 325 is the right amount. Does that sound at all familiar?
Yeah, I think so, but I haven't had a chance to talk to her.
Okay.
It can be adjusted next year too, so I don't think that's a big deal. I
right.
think we haven't voted on these. I thought we had voted on these.
Well, I guess I'm okay. We voted on all these back in the fall.
Well, I thought we voted last week. I guess I'm crazy. 2 weeks ago. I thought this is what we did. As far as
Well,
that.
we did formal votes on some and not in others. There was either we didn't talk about or we clearly needed more information, like the chief's vehicle, for example.
Okay.
So I'm going to move that we support A, B, C, and D for the DPW. Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All right, roll call, Braccio,
Aye.
Cook,
Aye.
Park. Jeff, I didn't hear you.
Aye. Yep.
Hinton,
I'll abstain.
Palmer,
Aye.
Pfaff,
Aye.
and Malinowski is aye. So that's 601. Mark or Brian, I'm going to turn to you on the next one. We heard about the water main for the first time at the last meeting. Obviously, this impacts water rates. It doesn't impact general fund. But do you have any update or items that we should be considering? I'm not even sure we're ready for a vote, but I had it here just in case. So any thoughts, updates based on your conversations offline with Karen?
I'll only say that I had a quick conversation with Karen and she actually was tepid on this project for next year. She really wants the 65,000 for engineering, as I understand it, but the meat of the project, she doesn't feel she's going to start next year, or she has limited capacity because of her operations at the moment. So as I understand it, she's not really too anxious to get that whole project approved this year. So that was my understanding. I don't know if Mark has more to add to that, but that's what I
think,
heard.
yeah, I just think the only thing I'd add, Brian, is that, she's got the shared streets grant that she's got to execute with the next several months. And then she's got the second half of the Main Street project, which hopefully is going to bid sometime in April and hopefully get going, sometime in June or July. So it's going to be a busy year for her on those items. And then to try and address something else in a construction season, it's not necessarily something she'd get to. She could use a 65 and tee everything up for the engineering and get that all set. Then I think she could look at that as being a 23 project.
Mark, what's left with the second half of the road project exactly?
I would need to defer to her. I think the biggest crux it's continuing the work that's been done on the western part of Main Street and now extending east through the downtown, reclaiming the road, upgrading the pipes, putting in, new sidewalks, new curbing. There's also the crossing of the track, under the track, replacing pipes and things. So there's easement with CSX. The selectmen will be discussing that at their next meeting, and continuing that, I believe, all the way out to Marlborough Road.
What's the harm in approving it as is right now?
I don't think she's got the number nailed for one thing. That's why she needs to do the study. So I think it's a little bit of shot in the dark. And if she's saying not to do it, then I don't know why we would do it.
Well, my understanding when she came to us last time is she said that it was affecting the water flow through the system, which would imply that, if you had surges or other issues, it might aggravate other things. And we can't solve that obviously by just approving this, but it sounded a little bit more impending than if she just wants to do engineering. I'd like to hear her come back and say it, if that's all she wants.
I mean, you're right. That's not what we heard.
All right, so we have two options. We can either support the engineering, which I heard a number of 65, or we can ask Karen to come back and weigh the pros and cons of engineering versus full-blown project.
Couldn't we have her just come back and do both? We'll approve the 65 now and then have her come back to reinforce her decision on whether to go ahead or not.
I guess, Mark, this is procedurally where I need some help. If we approve the 65 and then all of a sudden Karen brings facts that we all of a sudden go up to the $2 million cost, we can adjust that up into the warrant being printed. But once that warrant gets printed, we can't do a thing to it other than go down, right?
Yeah, the number at that point can only go down.
Okay.
So Mark and Brian, do you have any confidence that the number is correct? I mean, if she hasn't done the study, how can this be nothing but a little bit of a shot in the dark?
So she had a study that was done last year, and there was a 3-year plan put in place in terms of rate increases in order to make the fund fully solvent and not reliant on any retained earnings. In the number, she was carrying $2 million for a project. I think that she may have been thinking of a different project at the time rather than Newton Street, but a $2 million project is a $2 million project. So there is a certain level of confidence. I think the only thing she's checking with the consultant is to make sure that the water usage, the actual water usage versus the intended water usage or estimated water usage didn't vary enough to change any of those rate assumptions. I don't think it's going to be that. I wouldn't expect it to be that far off.
All right. How do people want to go? Joe, do you want to make a motion, or does people want to just wait on? It seems pretty clear we need engineering, but the question is,
Yeah, without her say so, I'll approve the engineering. I'm just confused as to why she's tepid now. So that's all.
yeah, I mean, Mark, I think the feedback maybe that we can take back to her though, is like, if we need outside support, right? This would have, if let's just say this needed to be done now, like it doesn't really matter what else is going on in town, right? Like, I'm sorry if someone's water main breaks and they're not getting the right flow of water. That's a lot different than a pocket park, right? And focusing time on a pocket park, I got to be honest. So I think we have a responsibility to make sure we're not punting this too far because we don't have the right resources. This is going to have an OPM based on the size of the project. So, and I don't think it's the same level of involvement from the town that like a building project would have if you have an OPM, but I could be wrong. So she just needs to educate us. I've never been through a water project before, so I don't know. But my inclination, unless someone wants, I think we keep it as a placeholder, and I just continue to articulate it's not coming out of the general fund. It's just a matter of whether we're ready to advance a full project, engineering. And I think the other important discussion mark that we can raise with the Board of Selectmen is, are we going to have a fall town meeting? Like, are we going to have an option to bring the, right? Even if it's a small agenda, like, is there going to be that option this year? Or not?
Lisa keeps trying, to try and integrate a special town meeting into the schedule. The problem is, Jason, is that we're not meeting in March. We're probably not meeting until June. So that's really going to shorten that whole, that whole cycle up. So if we have a town meeting, probably I would say early October, at the latest, so that we don't get in the way of the normal tax rate setting process. But I can't.
And this doesn't impact the tax rate,
Yep.
right? This impacts how the BOS set water rates. So is everyone okay moving on this, or have any additional homework items?
I'm okay moving on. I just have one quick question. So, and I don't know if anybody's going to know this, but say, for instance, the Newton Street pipe failed just next week. How would that get fixed or addressed or funded to be fixed?
Like I said, that's probably going to be, it depends. It depends on what the cost is to fix it. I'm sure there's a short-term fix and a long-term fix. And, we probably, could do things either within the budget or, Karen does have a little bit of reserve to go to. But like I said, and it could be a special town meeting if it was that dire.
Okay, so there is no real fix. Got it. Okay.
And Andrew, I'd suggest, given the amount of conversations you're having with her, if there's anything you can do to kind of prep her based on this conversation, I think that would probably go a long way.
Yep. I'll talk to her.
Okay.
So I was just going to say, this is exactly what we talked about 2 weeks ago when she was here. It's all listed in our minutes. Exactly this, that, it basically says that member agreement, she wants to wait on a vote of endorsement on this. So, and it talked about the $65,000 as an engineering study to understand this. And we're talking about a water flow directional issue, not a it's about to rupture issue. So, this is a planned, like it's a surprise. And she talked about, $2 million was set aside for would replace the Flag Road project. So instead of having that, it would be this. So I think she's looking for $2 million for this whole program. And on top of that, however it gets spent, if it gets spent on this project or Flag Road, is how they're going to end up having to optimize it after they actually figure out what's the real issue, what's the real long-term solution. Is it a $2 million fix or is it something different? So I'm just saying that as a point. I think there's stuff to be coming back for, and I have no issue with pushing off this vote.
But didn't we end up finally at the end of it, her saying all she's really doing is saying that the $2 million that she already had in her budget, instead of being spent on Flag Road, was going to be spent on Newton Street? Isn't that where we ended up?
It is.
Yep.
It is, right? So I kind of put this on the agenda thinking we were probably just going to vote to, support it or not support it. But I didn't kind of expect kind of the curveball of the tepid sort of nature, because I think that that's something we can help with, right? If that's an issue, and we have a responsibility. If there's a piece of capital infrastructure that was budgeted, maybe it just had a different name or road on it that's failing, it's within the budget and it needs to be taken care of and there's a good reason for it, then, we have to advance it to the taxpayers to make a decision.
But Jason, if it was already on there for Flag, why weren't we looking at that? Is it because it was a different year? It was fiscal year 23.
I think the way that the water, the way that the water capital plan flowed into the overall capital plan just never hit our radar. It was my fault. I blame it on me, but we've never talked about water capital needs.
Yeah. Advice never did either. We always poo-pooed and said, oh, we can just raise rates to cover whatever.
Well, I think those of us that have water and got our water bills last August felt it no matter how much you use, right? That was a jolt to a lot of people.
I didn't say it was a good attitude. That's what it was.
So, all right, where do clearly some people want to hear from Karen once more. Do we just leave it at that? And I'll keep a placeholder for, I'm not going to put engineering or construction, right? That way we leave our options open. You can always remove it. Good.
I think the question, Jason, is whether or not it's FY22 or 23, and then what goes into 22.
Yeah, or position a need for a fall, like get the engineering and then be ready with the engineering study to present whether it's 2 million or 1.5 or 3 million to town meeting.
Lisa, why do you want to have a fall town meeting?
I've kind of been advocating, Kathy, since I've been on the board. I looked at.
So this is a general thing. I agree with you, but I didn't know if there's
Yeah.
anything specific you thought. Okay.
No, just, and again, there's so many articles coming up now too, that I think we could take care of a lot of stuff in the fall and make spring a lot
But
more
that's what
efficient.
happened last year, that it was so late that you would just burn out, and it was really, so it just kind of, nobody had the strength to do the fall town meeting after that. So that's my only issue too, is like what Mark said, it's so late to begin with. It's kind of hard to imagine another one a couple months later.
No, I know. So, but again, you never know what could come up. Again, this might be the one thing that comes up that we may have to address. Hopefully not, but.
All right, I'm gonna keep us moving.
Yeah, Jason, real quick, I just had Karen on the phone. She's driving. Otherwise, she probably would try and come into the meeting and wrap this up tonight, but she's otherwise looking forward to speaking with Andrew.
Okay, thank you, Mark. All right, library interior renovations. We heard a lot about this last time. Anyone want to discuss anything before we vote? All right, so for purpose of discussion, I'm going to move that we support the library interior renovations for FY22. Is there a second?
Second.
All right, seconded by Joe. Any discussion? All right, roll call. Braccio,
Aye.
Cook,
Aye.
Park,
Aye.
Interneater,
Aye.
Palmer,
Aye.
Pfaff,
Aye.
and Malinowski is aye. So that's 7-0. Does anyone want to separate facilities? We have bathroom and interior, and then we have the general facilities maintenance fund.
Yes, definitely.
Okay. Why don't you walk us through that before we move on either one, Kathy?
Well, let's, okay, so I want to separate them because I've got a different vote on them, so I can't put them together. Based on the pictures that were sent to us, I believe that there is no urgent need to renovate the townhouse bathrooms. They were the bathrooms I've been, at least the women's bathrooms, the one I've been in. And I have been in it recently and thought that it was in pretty good shape. And now I know pictures sometimes make things look better than they really are. But they still look to me like they were in decent shape. So I'd like to see these two votes being done separately.
Any other comments?
I would concur the same thing. When I looked at the pictures, while it's not a beautiful bathroom of any sort, it looked fully functional and it looked in, like a well-maintained condition at least.
So Mark, can I ask a question, Jason?
Go ahead, Lisa.
Just to kind of refresh my memory on this, I apologize. So was the point of trying to get this done now because the townhouse was closed and we could make use of the facilities department that did an amazing job, by the way, on the bathroom at the senior center. I was able to see it. It's just absolutely amazing. Was that the basis of putting this in for fiscal year 22?
I think obviously the budget number came down significantly, Lisa, because we're able to, get the prison to do some stuff for us, and then we've got the staff in house to be able to do this. So, like I said, I looked at John's pictures. I told him, we hired you for facilities. We didn't hire you to take pictures, obviously. There's tile coming up in the men's room, and I said, my God, you had 4 pictures and you missed it 4 times. So like I said, look, there's always things that can be put off, for whatever reason. I mean, something's got to be done at some point. If this is going to be the new pipe under Northborough Road, then that's what it is.
So there is tile actually coming up in one of the bathrooms.
Yes.
I think to Mark's point, I would be in favor of pushing it, but the only concern I have is to do it now when it's cheaper, when the townhouse isn't really being used, versus pushing it off. And then maybe it's more nights, weekend, holiday work, because there's people that need to use it. And it's going to cost us incrementally more for overtime, et cetera, et cetera. But that was my only thought of keeping it in FY22.
Well, it's not now. It's going to be after July 1st. And hopefully by that point, we're starting to see more people come back, I would hope. So the labor part is still going to be the same. It's not, we can still use prison labor the next year, correct?
We're not using prison labor.
I thought that's what you just said.
No, the prison is making the dividers for us.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that, and again, that's depending on availability. We got very lucky when the prison wood shop made the meeting room table upstairs in the townhouse. But we waited forever and a day for some of the desks and furniture that's in the selectman's office and in the treasurer's office, the clerk's office. So it all depends.
Yeah, I don't have an issue putting it off, except I think, granted, I agree, Kathy, it's July 1st, but it's summer. And I think if people have an opportunity because they've been cooped up for so long to actually get away, I think people are going to certainly take advantage of it. I think the foot traffic, for me anyway, my thoughts are the foot traffic is going to be light through probably the fall. I think people still aren't going to want to potentially congregate in a townhouse or, and again, it's summer, people are just kind of fed up with being cooped up, the kids being, home from school. I know they're going back in March, but I don't know. I'm kind of on the fence on this one, but
And Lisa, I agree with everything you said. It's does, if we had a better budget situation, I would say fine, but we don't. So that's really what's driving me. I'm trying to find something that we can, and I'm doing the kick, I'm kicking it. I agree with that too. And it's not that I don't want us to have appropriate bathrooms in the townhouse. I just know the one I've been in is fine. So I was surprised to hear it needed to be done, but I haven't seen the minutes with the towel coming up. And the picture did not show that.
Any other commentary?
I think, but Kathy, to your point earlier, is that a conversation for advisory and selectmen in terms of looking
Yeah.
at the whole budget, not for capital?
It's hard for me, Andrew, to separate my two hats. So yes.
I know. Me too.
So
Well, we also haven't said if there are 2 bathrooms, we could do one and kick the other to the next year. If we had an appetite for actually doing some of the project.
You could do that.
and the men's is worse than the women's, Mark.
Yeah.
It sounds like.
I've been in the women's, I agree.
I was
Kathy,
gonna
it's
say,
not
I-
horrible.
I
Men
It's not
We
horrible.
never take care of those bathrooms. It's always the men with the bad bathrooms. So
That's actually a good compromise.
I don't want to be the naysayer, but if you got some tile issue, just, patch it up. I mean,
But
it's,
so this is more than bathrooms though, Mark. I think there's some other things that John was looking to do, right? Because it's labeled bathroom and interior renovations. I don't think the bathrooms, like there's some painting and other items in there as well.
I think there's some other things, but again, I don't want to, I don't want to speak for John on that. I don't want to be the reason that he gets it or loses this, this article in whole or in part. So it's probably something that, that he would need to speak to give you the detail, Jason.
I don't remember ever seeing a breakdown of how that 80 came together. Brian, I know you were talking to him. Do you have any further thoughts on that?
I was just trying to find if he sent me a detailed budget on it. If I find it, I'll let you know.
Okay. All right.
I'm not vested. I'll just say I'm not vested one way or the other. I'd be whatever
You have
everybody
to
wants
vote
do.
first though.
forgive my ignorance.
Can
on
we
it.
go in like a reverse order for this one?
Can I make one other comment? You've got
yeah,
enough
go ahead, Sue.
here for $2.2 million for renovation work of the townhouse. Why would you not just incorporate that all as one piece?
The 2.2 is on the outside, and it's because of the funding.
So that's funded by the Community Preservation Act, Steve, and it would probably be hard to include the bathrooms in the parameters that they have to abide by.
Yeah, 2 separate projects, Steve. Same building.
So the CPA money can fund the historical facade, but this I think would be a hard sell.
Okay.
All right. So does anyone want to make a motion? I heard one, I heard half, I heard full, or I heard none. Was the 3 things I heard.
I'll make a motion to approve the $80,000 for the facilities, bathroom, and interior renovation.
I'll second it.
And that's for the full 80, right?
Yeah, we can always change it. But
I'm just making sure everyone's clear on what they're voting on. So Kathy made a motion, Andrew seconded it. Roll call vote, Braccio.
Gotta make this tough.
I'll come back to you, Lisa.
Yeah, come back to me.
All right.
I'm
Pass.
flexible on this one.
Cook,
nay.
Hark,
I'm going to say nay because I want to break it up. So nay.
okay. Hinterneeder,
I'm going to say nay.
Palmer,
No.
Pfaff,
Aye.
and Braccio,
Nay.
and Malinowski is no. I'm going to move that we support 40,000 to start the bathroom and interior renovation with the intent of supporting the additional cost to finish the project in FY23. There a second?
Second.
Discussion.
Yes, I would like to amend that motion to say that we support renovating the men's bathroom, whatever that cost is, because I'm not sure it's $40,000. Given what it costs to do the senior center, I'm not sure it's anywhere near 40.
So so before I officially amend it, I guess my only item to point out is I don't know that I think we need John to tell us that that's the one that needs the most attention. Just as does anyone disagree with that concept? Okay. I'm trying to be cautious. I'm not going to amend my motion, Kathy. I just need a second first. Did someone second it? Because I just want to discuss it, and then I may withdraw it. But
It was seconded. It was seconded.
Okay. All right. So I just want to procedurally be correct. So here's my thought. Is there a general consensus around splitting this over a 2-year period? Or not? We just voted down doing it all in 1 year. So either we're pushing the entire thing to FY23 or we're splitting it. Because I think before vote, I don't want to vote on an amount because I think Kathy has a good point. If John comes back and says it's 50 in FY22 and 30 in FY23, or it's 60 in FY22 and 20 in FY23, or it's 60 in FY22 and it's 30 in FY23, because I don't know where the cost of materials is going to go.
FYI, John Parent spent $12,000 on the senior center bathroom. He had a budget.
I know. I don't think he's going to spend the full 80, but I also don't want to, handcuff his ability to deliver on the quality either. So we are going to have a turn back on that, right? But that's not going to hit free cash for.
But it's you're 2 years away, so I'd still like to get the number right.
Yeah.
Whatever we saw we want done.
Yeah.
So John said that he would do the men's room first, and it's pretty much a 40-40 split. There's really not that much difference. If there's any residual left, it's probably going to remain in the article and could be utilized and repurposed back for the other one in 23.
So you're
Unless-
talking to him right now, Mark?
Mhm.
Can you ask him one more question, which is compare, why would the one bathroom be 40 there and 12 at the senior center?
I'm going to say, well, like I said, that's a lot of typing and I'm not good at it, but I think
Bigger.
I mean, if you look at the size
Yeah.
if you look at the size of the bathroom in the senior center and the size of the bathrooms at the townhouse, I mean, the square footage is double or more. So, there's also more fixtures and everything in the townhouse bathrooms.
All right. So John has confirmed the amount. So I think I have a motion on the table to split it 40 this year, 40 in FY23. We're doing a roll call. Braccio,
Nay.
Cook,
Nay.
Park.
Aye.
Hinterneeder,
I'm going to say nay.
Palmer,
Aye.
Pfaff.
Aye.
And Malinowski is aye. So I had myself, Andrew, Joe, and Jeff is yes, and then Lisa, Steve, and Kathy is no. Do I have that right? All right, so that passes. Moving on to facilities maintenance. I'll move that we support the annual facilities maintenance article. Is there a second?
Second.
Any further discussion?
Yeah, I talked to John Parent about this just to make sure. I was hoping that he'd say he'd have money. Again, this is a warrant article that's recurring every year. So he's able, whatever is left in 1 year carries over the next year. But history is that he really does use it pretty much every year. He knows he's got 100. He stays within it, but he pretty much uses it. So I was hoping this year, with the buildings being as closed as they were, that he wasn't going to spend the whole thing for fiscal year 21, but he is. He says he's got lots of things he's been able to do. So that hope went away. So I think we got to support it. That's what I'm sure he needs more, but that's what we've been doing the last few years.
Okay. Any further discussion? Roll call. Braccio,
Aye.
Cook,
Aye.
Park,
Aye.
Hinterneeder,
Aye.
Palmer,
Aye.
Pfaff,
Aye.
Malinowski, aye. So that's unanimous. All right, we're down to the CPA articles. Anyone want to split those? All right, so I'll move that we,
What- Can you remind calendar field? I thought that was already approved and that's already,
it was supposed to be at last year's town meeting. It was pulled because of time constraints.
So Jeff, we've been talking about this field for years. So that's probably,
Right.
you keep, it's just been a topic. So finally it's coming to fruition, it looks like, to get fixed.
That's your question, Jeff?
what exactly, I don't really know the history of this one or enough to vote on it, so I apologize, but you know,
Do you want me to separate the motion then, if you're not comfortable on one?
Sure.
Okay, so I'll move that we support the townhouse project, the CPA townhouse project. Is there a second?
Second.
Any further discussion? Roll
Jason,
call?
only,
Go ahead.
only question on that is I don't think CPC has approved the dollar amount yet. I know they're talking about maybe not supporting the full dollar amount based upon what funds are available. So I don't know if we want to approve the dollar amount and then wait for, see what they put forward. Some of that might need to go back to general.
Well, that's news to me, I guess, but I have
Yeah,
not been
that's pretty
following.
important too. I hope they understand we're not counting on that. They're getting a much bigger match this year. The state tripled the match piece of it as far as what funds it. So I'm surprised that they think they've got a funding problem.
Brian, have you been involved in those conversations?
No. Nope.
All right.
We can approve it. Saying it might.
That's quite the curveball you threw at me, Andrew. But I appreciate it because and I trust that you have the right information there too. I just haven't watched any of their meetings. So, Brian, can you work with CPA? And I'm happy to help, or any member of this committee is happy to help you, because I realize it involves getting the chair usually involved to figure out where this thing, I mean, this has been discussed for like 6 months since it went forward. John Parent did a phenomenal job with his consultant. And the fact that this is just kind of still lingering, now we're saying we can't afford it. I mean, Brian did bonding schedules. We all know what bonding costs these days. Just doesn't make sense to me. So can you try to get to the bottom of that?
Yeah, I know they had a conversation last week about finances. I wasn't there, but I just heard there was a lot of questions about their cash flow, but I'm not sure what they were, so.
Okay.
Brian, do you think they know that the state match has gone up a lot?
Yes, they are aware of that, yes. Something didn't seem right, actually. I don't know, the meeting was kind of a, from what I heard, it was a little bit messy, as some meetings can get, so I just, yeah.
So maybe
can
it's just
follow up.
you helping them see that there is the right amount of cash flow there to maybe relieve any concern there. It's one thing if they object to the project, don't think it's a good need, that's their right, or don't think it falls under, that's their right, in my opinion.
Yep.
But the funding question, that's truly a curveball to me, based on everything I know about where those balances stand. But I think we should continue with the motion. So I did get a second, right? So I think as long as we continue to support this, because I think this is where the Board of Selectmen can assist too if they have the same level of support, assuming, none of our positions have changed. So let's do a roll call in the townhouse. So Braccio,
Aye.
Cook,
Aye.
Hark.
Aye.
Hinterneeder,
I'll abstain.
Palmer,
Aye.
Pfaff,
Aye.
and Malinowski is aye. So that's 601. I'll move that we continue our support for CPA funding of Count Lander Field for FY22. Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? Roll call, Braccio,
Aye.
Cook,
Aye.
Hark,
Abstain?
Hinterneeder,
I'll abstain.
Palmer,
Aye.
Pfaff,
Aye.
and Malinowski is aye. All right, we've finally gotten through item 5 of our agenda. But we really are in the home stretch on FY22. I'm gonna go back up to item 4. Did not forget about it. I was made aware of additional facts after the meeting where we took a vote to remove the DPW equipment trailer. I believe Mark or Brian, I can't remember which one of you came to me at this point and said, you had talked to Karen after the meeting. Can you just outline kind of the revised facts on the equipment trailer? And then I'll see if the committee has anyone's changed their mind or if we're going to continue with this as a remove item.
I think it was Mark that talked to Karen, right?
Yeah, Brian had his mic off. I wanted to see if he was going to try this one.
Don't
Yeah, I had talked to,
misrepresent it.
yeah, thanks, Brian. I had talked to Karen about this. The two issues being the plows and then the equipment trailer. She agreed that yes, the plows that were taken out last year when they were cut, just to talk about the plows for a second, when the plows were cut last year, the DPW refurbished 3 of them. The results appear to be pretty good and likely, got us another 2 to 3 years of life before they were going to be replaced. So what she intended to do was that same refurbishment to 3 additional plows. But again, it's going to mean that, we're going to be, replacing the majority of the plows, in a couple of years. So something to keep in mind. The equipment trailer, is my understanding from Karen, it's in pretty bad shape. It's not capable of hauling all of the equipment that DPW needs it to. If it was cut from capital this year, Karen was going to try to weld some support pieces onto the trailer, make it last another year. I think it's admirable. Karen is really, good at trying to make things work if in fact that's what she's told to do. But I think it's incurring a lot more liability than we want for not spending roughly $13,000. That you're not only jeopardizing, the trailer, but whatever you happen to be hauling on it. So Karen had said, she'd like to get the trailer funded this year. It would make a lot more sense if she could.
Sometimes I feel like, Mars and Venus are on 2 different planets. I called her and I specifically said, Karen, rank what you, the order you want everything and talk to me about everything. I didn't prod her. I didn't push her. She specifically said, don't need to do the plows because of the refurbishing and don't need the trailer. And then when she met with us 2 weeks ago, she wasn't quite as forceful about it, but she still did say that. So, you ask the question, you get the answer, and then it's 180 degrees different 2 weeks later.
Other thoughts? Does anyone want to revote, or is there? It's right now. It's removed from the capital plan.
I think we should have the liability issue.
I don't want anybody to get hurt. I don't want the trailer to fall apart in the middle of the road, whatever. But I'm just saying, you got to be consistent when you talk to people and not say one thing one week and then a different thing 2 weeks later. So I don't want anything. It is only $13,000.
I agree. I think it's 13,000 and we should certainly revote it.
I'll move to revote it if you want.
All right. Is there a second?
Second.
Motion's made and second. Any further discussion? Roll call vote. Braccio,
Aye.
Cook,
Aye.
Park,
Aye.
Hinterneeder,
Aye.
Palmer,
Aye.
Pfaff.
Aye.
And Malinowski is aye. All right. So that is back in. We're moving off of FY22 capital. Chair's report, but this is also what I'd call members report. The school research subcommittee met I guess it was 10 days ago, roughly at this point, to review the revised NASDAQ report. As I had indicated, the numbers are very close to similar to our current enrollment. So there will be a modeling exercise. I know we talked a little bit about that when we were reviewing the minutes. The school is definitely going to need some time for that. So that is forthcoming, but we probably won't have a substantial update until May on that. The superintendent did reach out to me this week to try to get the building department to confirm some permit data. I think based on feedback from the school committee and our subcommittee, and the administration as a whole, they're just making sure every number is as accurate as possible, given I'll call it the pretty substantial swing that occurred. So there's not a whole lot to update there yet. They are very close to awarding a facilities assessment of NERI to understand how critical some of the things they're carrying in their capital plan are, in terms of how many years do they really have to make a decision, because that will also inform some of the permutations. And then once they're available, I will circulate the minutes from that meeting. Kathy had put together some additional scenarios that we may be looking through. There's also additional discussion around Fin that have come in terms of, we had originally kind of put that off to the side because of the age of the students that building is designed for. We've had people questioning why that's not in place. So, the other thing I'll just comment, and the superintendent made a pretty impassioned plea, right? Is obviously this is starting to get a little bit of publicity around it. Not everyone watches our meetings, right? But people do read articles. We are trying to be cognizant, right, of everyone is going to have very different feelings as this topic advances, especially our educators, right, that are obviously working through probably the toughest conditions that they've worked through in their career, is my guess, this year, in terms of everything they've had to deal with. So we are going to either be looking to issue some sort of update with what I'll call all of the facts of what's going on, why we're doing it, and be some sort of joint messaging from superintendent, town administrator, capital planning, and school committee, just saying, this is why we're doing this, and let our message be the message of fact, as opposed to various interpretations, because, we all know how one fact can become, 3 to 5 pieces of fiction. And obviously, I think, Kathy, hopefully you would support this. Everyone is working with, in collaboration, but also with the best interest of all parties, not just one specific population. It's just, we knew it was going to be a delicate topic, but now we're going to hit decision-making stage here pretty soon. And we just need to make sure that people are aware of what's going on, and there will be the right level of public input at some point here too. So that's the update on that. I don't know if there's anything you'd add, Kathy, or any questions from the broader committee.
Yeah, I wanted to add a couple things, which is as everyone who's lived here for any amount of time knows, there's nothing that gets people more interested and emotionally involved than the schools. The last time the last big one, of course, was deciding whether to have 2 high schools or 1 high school. And those meetings, you had thousands of people at those meetings, which, we never have for anything in this town. So there's nothing that's more important to people in this town, I think, than the quality of the schools, et cetera. So having said that, the previous committee that looked at this was a much bigger committee, and it included a lot of teachers and a principal from the very get-go. So the teachers were involved from the very get-go, and that's the difference between this one. It's not, I'm not, I don't know what's right, what's wrong, but that's the difference here. So I think the teachers felt a little blindsided about what was going on. And so I think this will all work out. They'll get the information. Obviously, no one's making, their input is going to be very important as far as what happens here. So there's that. But then I'm hoping we all stay really broad-minded because it's going to take, a lot of people putting their heads together to come to the best answer. But, we really did think that Finn was not a solution here, that we thought Finn would just be Finn. It might add a grade, but because it's built for little people, that it really wasn't conducive to close, that we need to have that school for little people. But I keep getting phone calls about Finn as far as, pros and cons. I never thought about it. So that's why it's nice that people are doing that, because they were getting information we didn't know. And then, and I forget who's somebody sent the information on one of the buildings in Southborough that's available for lease as far as the leasing rate goes. We really didn't think about that. In 2013, we weren't worried about what the town was going to do with the shuttered building. We didn't have as much of a need for extra space at that point. So it was just, you're going to close the school or not, and the town can go figure out what to do with the closed school. That was not part of that process. But this time it is, so it's much more complicated because the town does need more space. We've got people cramped into the senior center. We've got 2 departments in the hinterlands in a really old building that we're thinking about possibly selling. So it's much more complicated this time. So we need everybody to really start thinking about, as you drive around, what all the different choices are here. Takes a village.
Any questions? All right. Standing committee language for town meeting warrant. So this was in the file for everyone to look at in advance. In terms of the process to get to this point, I looked at the committees that have standing committee language in town code and looked to the more recent ones, not the earlier ones. I started with MTC, which was the last standing committee approved. It is about 5 times the length of what I have on this piece of paper. Just like if you actually go look in the town code on the town website, and try to think about some of the discussions we've all had to try to formulate this. Mark and Brian have also reviewed it to offer commentary, and any comments they had are incorporated in the version that is presented here tonight. One of the things I just wanted to be very transparent about for anyone that goes and looks at other committee language. There's a few things that I thought about as we went through this process, that I just want everyone to weigh in on. And I purposely didn't add in because I didn't want it to be my view. I wanted it to be, our 7 view of what we advance for potential language in a warrant article. Ultimately, BOS is the sponsor. It'll be their language, and BOS will vote, advisory will vote. But a lot of other committees use the word elected official and specifically prohibit them from being on committees like this. This does not contain any language around that. And the rationale for that is obviously we have one elected official here with us now. There could be a day, at least in my opinion, that a school committee member sits on this committee if they, they have the right experience to act not only from a school perspective, but also broader and understand and that may be critical given the discussion we just had moving forward, but it also doesn't require there to be a representative from each of those committees. So I thought that, in my personal opinion, that was the right balance to leave it broad enough so that you're finding kind of what I'll call the best athletes to advance whatever the town's priorities are, given that this is going to require a vote at town meeting to amend moving forward. Once this is in the code, it's not going to be going to the Board of Selectmen and asking them to change a charge. Like this has to go through town meeting. So that was one item I considered. In the one item I had a discussion with Mark and Brian around is the actual number of members on a committee. We're obviously 7 now, so that's what I stuck with. There is a possibility that, we should be considering maybe a 5-person committee. right? And, the rationale for that, there's pros and cons to it, right? Is gets you to a 3-person quorum, right? We've all been, it's a lot easier to hit a quorum in the Zoom environment. As chair of a prior committee, I used to be counting down the seconds till a meeting, hoping that people were going to show up. I don't think I've had that once here, sort of thing, but we will get back to some sort of, new reality at some point where, in-person attendance may or may not be required. Zoom may or may not be, part of that. Obviously, that's up to the state to how they craft it, but also just thinking through what it took to get us to 7 people, right? Is that the right answer going forward? I don't think I'd be raising this if I didn't know that like some of us probably are moving on at some point here soon. Like if we were like 7 and there was no foreseeable change coming, I don't know that I'd raise this topic. But given that we are enacting something that goes in town code, I think we all need to think about it more holistically of what is the right number for this committee to be just as effective or more effective moving forward, and not kind of handcuff the needs of future, parties that may sit in all of our seats. So those are the things I thought of. Would welcome commentary on any part of it. The goal is to put this in front of the Board of Selectmen so that they can decide how they want to move forward with it. Is where we're going.
Sorry, I have
Go
some
ahead, Lisa.
comments whenever you're ready.
Go ahead.
So, a couple of the things that I thought were important, and I thought they were important when this was created. I think where we're doing 10-year planning and whatnot, I think it's important that a member of the Board of Selectmen and a member of the advisory. I feel pretty strong that we need to call that out. And you're looking at your 2 finance and budget, committees that are involved. I think that's important to have those perspectives on here. I think 7, I still support the 7 number. I mean, when we were looking for an engineer, we had 3 people step forward. If we needed to fill a seat, we had 3 very well qualified people step forward. So I would just like to see, a Board of Selectmen and an advisory member specifically called out. One other question I had was under section D, that it talks about the town's finance team. I would like to see assessor included in that. As an alternate, because I believe, if I'm not mistaken, the assessor's on the finance team as well. So I'd like to see that. And then my one other comment and question I had was, if there's a way to find some way to incorporate where we talk about project oversight, to include something if CPC potentially might be willing. I don't know what the language would be, but I'd like to see CPC included in this in some way, because it's really not on what's currently here. And I don't know how we'd incorporate that, but those are just some initial thoughts.
So let's take each of those. I'm going to go from easiest to probably, more. Does anyone object to adding the word assessor to that section?
No.
Okay. So I'm just going to add any comments on the 7 and requiring 1 seat be reserved for a BOS member and 1 seat for an advisory member?
I think my only thought there, Jason and Lisa, is would the advisory and selectmen be voting members or non-voting? Like, I'm wondering if we have 5 voting members and then, selectmen and advisory are non-voting, kind of like the ex officios, then I think that makes sense. But if they're voting, I think the 7 makes sense.
So Andrew, I'm not against that. Typically what happens when a vote comes before the Board of Selectmen, if I vote in the capital, I don't vote in the Board of Selectmen unless a vote is needed, so again, I would be fine with that. I just think the presence and what we could bring back as well in updates and whatnot to our boards and, the board and the advisory committee is important.
Yeah, so I think maybe 5 with, basically 4 ex officio members. Might not be a bad way to go.
Yeah, I would be fine with that.
So basically you're saying BOS member and advisory member would not vote on capital. They would vote on their, well, Lisa would not have a prohibition on voting on BOS if that happened. Advisory, I think the advisory rep would still be hamstrung by the language, even as edited, if I'm thinking about it right, Kathy.
You are, unless we change what we're planning on.
Right, that's what you're right, like this,
Okay.
they are
They'd
interrelated.
be like more of a liaison than a member, right?
Well, we've done liaisons before, but I think that given the probably extensive financial background of the advisory member and the extensive total background of the BOS member, they should vote.
So,
And of course, there can only be one of each.
Yeah.
okay, so there's only be one.
There's somebody here who's on the advisory right now.
It's 4 people.
There's
Three of
three.
us.
Three. And it's
Oh,
too
3,
many.
sorry.
It's too many, Stephen. It's so, but it is what it is. So this won't happen again. So there should be one and one at the most.
Okay.
And so Jason's committee, so he had 9 on the public safety building committee, and it was too many. So I agree, 9's a wrong number. So I do think it's between 5 and 7. I think advisory works really well with 7. I think it's a great number. So I like 7 of the 2 choices. They're both good choices, but I think 7's the better of the 2.
All right, so is anyone opposed to 7? Let's start there. Okay. All right, so we're gonna keep 7. So then the question is, do we specifically call out BOS and advisory? And are they voting members or ex officio? I think is the question on the table. Or do you leave it generic and know that that's the intent without requiring?
I think if it's 7, they should be voting and we should put it in there.
Any objections to that?
The only question, Jason, is whether or not, in that case, would they still be appointed by the Board of Selectmen in terms of advisory, or would advisory select their representative?
It's kind of both, right? Advisory would make a recommendation, but ultimately the board could say, no, we're not doing it. If I've got that right, Lisa, right?
Advisory has to approve by majority vote anybody on another committee, so that would have to happen as part of it. And then, so they could do that and then ask the BOS to appoint that person. The BOS could say yes or no, then we'd be back to the drawing board if they said no.
How large is the advisory committee?
It's supposed to be 9, Steve, but we've got 7 members right now. We haven't had 9 in a long, long time because you just don't have a lot of people stepping up. That's what the problem is with these committees. We've got lots of vacancies right now. So advisory is sponsoring an article for this year's town meeting that's going to hopefully get approved. That's going to reduce the number of advisory from 9 to 7.
Gotcha. So, right now, 3 out of your 7 are on this committee as well.
Yes, which is causing advisory a problem because we don't have a quorum when we deal with capital. So it's a problem.
Steve, when it started, it was 2, and then Jason joined advisory, so now we have 3.
Understood. So I'll just say how, being one of those 3 qualified people who applied, this is the first time ever I've seen an announcement that was looking for a position to fill a committee. Not being ignorant, and maybe it's just the fact that the word engineering or construction was in it that caught my attention. But there's probably a lot of people in this town who are still willing. We just have to figure out a way to get it out there in an advertisement ad that says, these are the kinds of folks we're looking for. I mean, we have the same challenge almost, every board of directors that you go to, for people who are not getting paid. Is finding the right ones. But when you start marketing or targeting, like, where are we the weakest? Is there a lawyer in town? Where are we the weakest? Can we find a finance person? I have no experience, by the way, in this town at sending those out. So you all can look at me and laugh if you want to, but
We're not going to laugh, but we're going to give you a job.
Yeah, I know.
but that, that was the reason, I looked at
Mark
it.
is taking notes. He knows like how many times I go to BOS about how do we find the right people? So kudos to his team for finding a way to effectuate that message, right? Because
Well,
Okay.
somebody put my name in the community advocate paper, and all of a sudden, I've got 30 friends all congratulating me on a position I had no idea they even knew about. So I'm just,
all right, so I will figure out a way to craft one advisory and one selectman, because we can vote on this when we come to talk about the presentation, if everyone's okay with that, instead of trying to make it up on the fly. Were there any other comments?
So we're just making a suggestion to Board of Selectmen. That's what this is for, because they've got to approve the language.
Yes, but when we get into South Union, you're gonna find, I think they want like a strong recommendation from us on something, and then they'll weigh in as opposed to
Okay.
just
all right,
handing it.
That's fine. That's fine.
I'm
Jason,
surprised, Kathy, you didn't call out the acronym I used. So I looked around, because this whole CPC thing, right, that we went back and forth on. So I actually named it Capital Improvement and Planning Committee, not Capital Planning. Did anyone?
I was going to ask you if we were creating a separate committee.
That way there's no confusion of which CPC we're talking about going forward. Any objections to that naming?
So Steve, we have a separate CPC that people are really used to, so it was confusing.
Is that the preservation thing?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Call it SIPSI.
I would concur with the capital improvement and planning. That's the type of stuff that I'm on at the zoo in Boston. So, I mean, we do improvements here and start helping you plan it. So I like the idea.
We used to call it, when it was the former version, Capital Budget Committee. But CIPC sounds good.
There's other towns that use that name, so it makes sense.
Yeah, I'm
Now
not
it'll be
taking it.
SIPSI.
Yeah. Any other comments on this? All right. Mark and Brian, thank you for your help along the way with that. I'm glad we have a direction forward. Next item is item 8, discussion of next steps related to South Union School, including response to BOS requests from 2/16/21 discussion. Lisa, I'm going to ask for your help on this. Mark, I'm going to ask for your help too. Can't say you haven't been forewarned. So as you recall at our last meeting, I gave a heads up that Board of Selectmen was going to have on their agenda discussion of next steps in South Union. I was the only one there. And the general sense I got, and again, Lisa and Mark, please weigh in, is they are looking for a formal recommendation on a path forward on South Union. My general comment back was, I thought we gave that in July of last year. I said August in the meeting, but I went back to our minutes. We actually took a vote back in July. We subsequently had executive session discussions, and what came out of that was a perk test was ordered. However, I posted communication in our packet, right, of what exactly they did or didn't do. So I might have Mark speak more directly to what happened on the perk test and why they went that route, if there's any questions based on the email chain and the documentation. But I think what we need to decide here is whether we want to vote anything further than what we already have done, or whether we just want to engage in a collaborative discussion with the Board of Selectmen next week of where they want to go. But I think there's really two decisions. Say that the property is surplus. There's 3 decisions. Say that the property is surplus to the town and just seek town meeting authorization to sell it. Do nothing between now and whenever town meeting is. Option 2 is to put it on the market now and to basically come to town meeting with an offer. That's going to require Mark and his team to do whatever paperwork is needed to follow all of the right procurement rules. And then if you do that, are you putting any sort of limitations on the facade or not when you go out? Or option 3 is this is a really bad idea. We should just hold on to it, for the foreseeable future, in which case this committee would need to then start looking at the capital needs of that building for future fiscal periods. So Mark, Lisa, I'll let you weigh in on anything else or path to help direct this conversation any more than what I just did. And then I'll open up to the rest of the committee.
So I had a brief discussion with Mark, and I'm gonna throw it to Mark. Jason, I think Mark has a path that he's gonna bring to the board, the meeting on Tuesday. So Mark, I'm just gonna throw it to you because it seemed to work for me.
Geez, I would have thought you would have set the path a little bit more, but okay. I will just say Lisa and I had a spirited discussion earlier, of which Lisa was proven correct. She was adamant that that there had been an appraisal done on this property, and I could not remember doing said appraisal. However, going back through the emails, the reason I couldn't remember doing said appraisal is because it had Jason Malinowski, chair, capital planning committee, who had on the front of it that had, this was something capital planning undertook. And so from a process point of view, if the town is going to solicit bids on this, that piece, the appraisal is all done. Jason alluded to the perk test. Karen had asked if she could have a consultant get involved with this. When the consultant went back and looked at the records in the Board of Health, there was perk testing and holes that were dug back in 2004. And it was their opinion that to redig the holes was not going to change the material and was not going to change the results. And so they issued a letter. I don't have it in front of me, but my understanding and my recollection is that based on the amount of space that you would need to carve out for septic system, you were looking at approximately 10 bedrooms eligible to build on the property, not knowing exactly what the town was looking to have built or that a developer would look to build on the property. Since we do have the appraisal done, we would if we put this out to bid, it would be about a 30-day process. It is a 30-day minimum that we have to have this bid per procurement law. And then after that, an evaluation committee, and then a recommendation for award, probably another couple of weeks after that process. And then could look to enter, into a purchase and sale, obviously conditional upon the approval of town meeting in likely sometime in June. So there is a path forward to get this done. I was chatting also with Lisa, and maybe it was Jason at one point, is that, this was process we did for Fayetteville Hall. It did take 2 attempts at town meeting, was simply to give the board the authorization to dispose of the property based on the terms and conditions as set by the board. And I think that the path that is being suggested is a little bit different, that, it's going to be based on a specific bid or a specific number to dispose of the property. So it's a little bit more directed in terms of the approach this time.
Open up for discussion.
I think, Jason, whether that this discussion maybe was more of an executive session discussion we need to have.
We can't go into executive session.
I know, but
It's deciding on a path forward. This is an executive. It's got to be a public matter.
I mean, as far as I'm concerned, the perk test is only taking into consideration keeping the entire parcel intact and putting in 10 bedrooms. That's the only testing they did. They only did perking only on the front. So, you can't parcel it out and make it into separate parcels, which would be more highest and best use. So it's a missing piece if that's the direction we want to go.
Yeah, I'm much in the same camp with Andrew. I would like to know, I want people to know what the maximum value that we can attain is versus what happened from the stories you tell of Fayetteville Hall, where there's lots of restrictions on it. And we really don't get much in value for it, because if it's going to end up being in the Fayetteville Hall category, I have a really hard time disposing of the property, knowing that there is that much buildable space there to begin with. And we could build a whole new building on that property with the school intact. We could build right there. So there'd be no need to dispose of the property if we were looking to build space. That, we could realign that property to do it.
I think there's a couple other two nuances, which would be maybe the finding a relocation spot of the playground too. And also whether or not this would be a property that maybe became zoning for multifamily based upon that new near the train station requirement. I'm not sure the exact name of whatever the new law is, but.
I don't think there's any plan to build a town building on that property. Where it's located, what the cost would be. And if a developer is interested in it, they're going to do, I would think, their own perk test, and they're going to decide what the highest and best use of the property is. So they'll look at all the different permutations as far as what they could do. So as far as the three choices Jason outlined, I think that this is the better of the two that would dispose of the building. However, I do think the facade protection question has got to be answered up front, because that's a hugely important thing. Is what was the issue with Fayetteville Hall too. If we do one, which is just ask the town for authority to do this, I think you're just going to raise a lot of questions, because they do remember Fayetteville Hall, and we really didn't get anything for it. And so they may say, well, why would you do this if you're not going to get anything? So if you come with the second one with if we actually got a P&S that had a number on it, I think that you're giving them a choice with facts. I think the second alternative is much better than the first, but I do think we've got to get the facade question answered before it goes out to bid, as far as whether it's going to be protected or not.
I think my concern is that the perk tests that were done, a developer is going to do their own, but they're not going to give you the full value of the property based upon the speculation that the property would perk. They're going to, it's going to be a significant, they're going to have an upside that hopefully the other areas of the property would perk, and they can make more property and more lots. But without those, they're going to have a significant discount in their offer based upon not having that in hand.
I mean, we don't know that someone won't buy it and tear it down completely and just buy it for the land.
But they'd be subject to the demolition delay bylaw, I'm assuming.
Do we have a copy of that appraisal?
We can't talk about in public.
Okay, thank you.
Well, I think there's, when we talked about the stakeholders in the neighborhood, I mean, you do have the church right across the street. And so whatever the plan is moving forward, you're going to have a group that comes from that church. So there's going to be blocks of invested parties that we're going to have to be dealing with.
Lisa, can you speak to the outreach that the board did? Because I think you did do a bunch of that already.
So, and Mark, please jump in. I believe that all of the neighbors, I don't know, what was the radius, Mark, that we did? Was it 300?
I think it was 300-foot radius.
A 300-foot radius through the assessor's office, had gotten a letter from the board just updating them that the exploration that was being taken place by the board and the Capitol Committee. Does that answer?
Lisa, has Historic weighed in on this at all? Have you guys heard anything from them?
So they did through
To us.
Capitol.
Yeah, so they sent a letter back in August when we took our motion.
Yeah.
With a letter related to the facade, that they'd obviously like to see it maintained. Let me propose this for a path based on what I'm hearing, and I welcome anyone to change the path. While we may have personal preferences, I don't believe it's our view as capital planning to weigh in on the facade or not. I think that's a BOS decision, weighing the many stakeholders and obviously all of us as residents. I hear Andrew's concerns about the perk test. As someone that knows nothing about perk tests, my ears went up, or when I saw the 20-year-old sort of data here. So what I would suggest is I'm more in the two camp, that bucket of let's list it and see what we can get, but also simultaneously maybe do some more due diligence on our side once the snow melts here of doing the perk test the way we had envisioned it running, so that the whatever committee Mark referenced that exists to review these when it comes back would have that data to best evaluate the offers that are received. And I think that can be done simultaneously. I don't think you need to wait to have it done to list it. I think the question is, do you list it now or not? I'm hearing more of a consensus towards two, but I haven't heard anyone definitively like say that other than maybe Kathy. I appreciate and echo Andrew's concerns on the park. In my personal view, and you can all disagree, is I don't know that we should weigh in on the facade. I think we know that that's going to limit the value, but I think that's a discussion that goes well beyond value.
But if we're putting out to bid, whoever's bidding on it's going to want to know.
And
But that's for the board of, but that's the board of selectmen's decision, in my opinion.
yeah, and I think
As the
the perk
executives.
is less of a concern if the BOS says, listen, we're going to put a deed restriction that it can't be subdivided, right? And we're going to keep the facade. And in that case, it's a one building. And then this perk test is for already approved for 10 units in there. So you'll get a developer that's going to keep it as one parcel, keep the facade and put 10 units in there. You know, if that's the way you want to go, that's the bid. It might not be the highest and best use of the property, but then the perk test isn't less of an issue there. So I think it really depends on kind of what the constraints and what the bid would go out as.
So Andrew, I'm confused about your concern on the perk test. The report from Mike Sullivan said, ground is ground. You can use what we did before. It's fine. It's good enough for a developer to make a bid. And then they'll come in, they'll do a P&S. It's going to have a due diligence clause in it with the time limit for them to come in. That will allow them to walk if they don't find with it. But they're going to do their own perk test to satisfy themselves. So why would we need to do anything other than what we've already done?
Well, normally, and if a builder saw this, the perk test that was done was at the front of the building based upon the building itself. So they dug other holes, but the only actual percolation test they did were the 3 in the front of the building to substantiate a septic field for a 10 unit in the main building. There was none done on the other areas of the property. So if they wanted to parcel out part of that property, they would have to do a separate test, which you don't usually do in your P&S inspection period. At that point in time, you would do it ahead of time and then put it out to bid with that information, because they don't need to re-perk it once they have this report. They can go directly to the Board of Health and get their plan approved. And Steve, I'm not sure if you cover any of this kind of engineering, but I'm a little over my skis, but that's what I know.
Yeah, so, I mean, I'll say soil is soil, and once you've done testing, it doesn't change in general. So, all of these are valid. I mean, they talk about revealing ledge on the mostly on that west side, which is the larger, flatter area, only 2 or 3 feet down. So I don't know. I would look at this as saying, there's enough information here for somebody to figure something out, and then in a due diligence process, they'd come in and slap 10 grand down to whatever the number is to run a couple more perks. I mean, that's not a big investment item. No matter if you do it again or not, they're probably going to do it. It's my guess.
I'm just really concerned that we try and see what we can get maximum. I mean, when I was young, I watched this happen in Newton, where the mayor sold off a bunch of school properties, and the same thing sort of happened with Fayetteville, where, not only did they not get that much money, but a couple of years later, I mean, there are only so many parcels in town large enough to do some things with for the town, and I don't want to handcuff us later for a few pennies now. I know that there may be capital concerns moving forward, and I'm not opposed to shedding, but you could easily trade that for a more suitable building. And there are some around in the town Kathy may be remembering when I said there's an empty building at the end of my road that's been empty for years. It's where Cass was. But it's been empty for years and it's just been sitting there. So, I mean, it's not that there isn't more land here, but just in terms of flexibility for the town, I don't want to see us get shafted on return.
Jason, I apologize, but what are we actually, are you looking to make a motion on something or are we looking to make a?
I'm looking to get a sense, but I think I've got enough of a sense to make a motion and we can go from there. So I'm going to move that this committee reaffirm our support for listing the South Union building after a vote of the Board of Selectmen. Their second.
I'll second it, assuming that the Board of Selectmen are you're asking, they actually put this to us to actually.
It's been going back and forth since August, to be completely honest.
Okay.
We've had some discussions in executive session around what the appraisal was, but this notion of do you list it or do you wait for town meeting support to sell it? That's just been the yo-yo that keeps kind of going back and forth. So what I heard at the last meeting was, bring us a formal recommendation. I think we had it back in July, but I'm just making sure no one's mind has changed. Andrew did raise a new fact about the zoning thing, but I think that's, I think we don't know enough about that yet. And I think there are other avenues to address that particular topic on that side of town. And I think Andrew also raised the playground matter. I think I'm thinking back to Lisa's land presentation. I think there's a lot of good avenues on the south side of town for those that live on the south side that are interested in that playground too. So my personal view is I don't view those as gating options of whether we move on this or not. But I do not support going to town meeting with just a blanket, give the BOS authorization, because it may handcuff them too much with a lot of what ifs versus if I'm a view of you present someone with a plan and the finances around it, you're more likely to get support.
I agree. When you've got a contract saying, here it is, signed contract, instead of what happened with Bayville Hall, which is exactly what Jason just said happened, which everybody started throwing monkey wrenches in it and it took forever. It took 2 meetings to get it done. So show the contract.
So Jason, should we just kind of say that we're for disposing the building and then leave it up to selectmen? Should we say that we have some thoughts in terms of restrictions we would like to see on the bidding? I'm thinking along the lines of if we go and say, listen, we keep the facade, deed restricted that it's one parcel, can't be subdivided, and then, or just and say that's our suggestion to the selectmen as they put out a bid, or do
So my view is I plan to make that, let's just say my motion passes. That to me says BOS, if you agree, work with Mark on what he articulated and get it out there so that we have something to act on. Now, if you want to move anything else for consideration, but I was planning to leave it like that because my view is I don't know that we should be opining on the facade. And I don't know that I'm of the fact that let's make it broad and let someone come back to us. Right? Like someone may have a view or vision of that property that they offer us a lot more that none of us are thinking about. And I don't want to restrict what they do. Like just go and float it and see what we get. The worst thing is we reject it. And we, meaning the Board of Selectmen, reject it on behalf of the taxpayers and we go back to the drawing board. But we all know, right? More restrictions you put on something, the less dollars we're going to get and probably the less happy everyone's going to be about the proposal.
Yeah, I think my only concern is that without the other perk tests, I think we might get more money than if we put a restriction that it can't be subdivided, but not incrementally more to make it worth adding 6 or 7 other houses in town which we then might have to, add school expenses, et cetera, that putting the restriction would eventually be in the town's benefit. We may get more money, incrementally more. I don't think we get more than maybe 10, 20%, but we would then have additional costs and we'd have more houses there. There'd be more neighborhood impact than kind of keeping the building footprint the same. Just a thought.
More houses mean more revenue, more tax
And more-
base.
Yeah, but what
Some
he's trying to say,
difficulties.
Joe, is that we have done various computations over the years as to how much a house has to be worth, assessed value, before it actually gives us enough revenue from that to pay for the cost that providing services to that house is. And I mean, it's a crazy computation. I don't really believe in them, but you're not going to change the cost of schools for 6 houses. Schools are fixed cost. You have to add a lot of kids like Park Central before you got to worry about changing the cost of schools. But that's what Andrew's referring to, is that we do believe it's like $1,250,000 is what we need to have as a break-even house in Southborough to pay for all the services, especially when you've got families with kids. But I think it's a little bit of a bogus computation, so I don't put much store into
Well,
it.
that's also a limited time frame computation model too.
Yeah. It used to be 750, then it went to 1,250,000. So
Jason, I'll second your motion.
I think you already did. At least I had you down, otherwise I shouldn't have been having that discussion. So I think you seconded, then asked a question immediately.
Sounds like
So,
me.
are we ready to vote on that with the understanding that people can add supplemental items in their own motions right after this, depending on where it goes? All right, so Braccio,
Aye.
Cook,
aye.
Hark,
Aye.
Hinterneeder,
Aye.
Palmer. I didn't hear you, Joe.
I'm going to abstain. at this
Okay.
point.
Pfaff.
Aye.
And Malinowski's aye. So that's 601. Now, Andrew or anyone else, do you want make any further motions or requests or recommendations?
I move that we, request of the selectmen in the bidding process to make a deed restriction on the parcel, that it cannot be subdivided, and that the original building is kept.
Is there a second? Andrew, I will second it to allow you to explain for
Sure.
discussion.
So the thought process there is, without the already approved perk tests, and I've gone through this on my own property, the value of the property is significantly less because it's not an approved A&R lot that can be built upon. They'll have to go through the perk testing, which may or may not pass. They also have to go through the other process. So without that being done, the value goes probably from, I don't know, $20,000, $30,000 a lot to $200,000 based upon my analysis when I did my house. So you're not, we may get the value for that, but it's a builder's taking a huge risk that something that they've never tested will be perfect. And then also the impact to the neighborhood. So these are pretty condensed neighborhood, which is a nice big open spot there. A person or a builder, that developer that buys that would look to parcel it out into, I think, 7 separate properties based upon my calculations on lot size in that area. So I think that would be a bigger impact to that neighborhood, and honestly would be a lot harder to pass through town meeting with the abutters.
We'll let the neighbors come to town meeting and tell us that. But Andrew, the developer is going to have a due diligence period. He's going to do a perk test or do whatever he's got to do to satisfy himself. He's not going to close on this without knowing that. So I think that first concern is not an appropriate one. The second one, believe me, the neighbors will come to town meeting and they'll tell us what they think.
And Mark, can you confirm if in any sort of RFP process, if the BOS goes down that avenue based on the last vote, would the developer have to outline what they're going to do? Let's just say they put no restrictions on it. Like, would there be like a request in the documentation, or is that too early to tell, or is that something that the Board of Selectmen could think about asking for?
It's something the selectmen could ask for. They could take that into consideration. I think with regards to Fayetteville, there were some conditions, there were quite a few conditions put on the property that obviously reduced the value. The board was probably as interested in some preservation of the property and restoration of the property as they were, the price, which I think was reflected in the price that the town received for the property. So I'm not going to put Lisa in the position of having to say what, she might or might not want to do, but that is a consideration the board could make, Jason.
So Mark, am I not correct in saying that the restrictions that ended up on the Fayetteville Hall sale mostly came at town meeting? They got added at town meeting by various people that kept standing up. So I guess the Board of Selectmen could either put this out to bid with a requirement that the facade be maintained right up front, or not. And then, basically take the town meeting with no facade preserved, and the town votes it up or down, and then we start all over again if the town votes it down.
So Kathy, if I may just add, I think at town meeting voters were clear on what they wanted, but it wasn't binding for the board. Mark, correct me if I'm wrong. Again, I wasn't on the board then. And I'm just trying to remember that the board had told town meeting when they disposed of it that they would take those concerns into consideration. Mark, is that correct? That the board wasn't bound by town meeting saying they wanted to see it preserved? The option was there to dispose of it as basically what the vote at town meeting was. Is that correct?
Yeah, a little bit of a slippery slope, Lisa. I think that there were things that people put out there they wanted to see.
Yeah.
And the board had agreed that they would put them in there, whether or not that was actually binding or not.
Okay.
That's for anybody to say, but the board did follow through on what they said that they would do.
Yeah. And it made a big difference. And there were a lot of conditions. I think there were 20 some odd conditions put in with the bid that was eventually the first bid that came in. So
if we go number 2 route here and approve and vote on that, and that's what the Board of Selectmen agreed to do, and then you get to town meeting, and it gets not approved because enough people want to see it maintained, deed restriction like Andrew's talking about, then we just start all over again because you won't be able to, that you got a P&S already signed at that point. That doesn't have all those restrictions in there. So maybe that's the bigger downside where we'll push it back a year if it looks like town meeting really does want to have all those restrictions on there and we didn't go out to bid with them in there.
All right, so Andrew's motion's on the table. Is there any further discussion on it? All right, roll call. Braccio,
I'm going to abstain.
Cook,
Nay.
Hark,
Nay.
Hinterneeder,
Nay.
Palmer,
Nay.
Pfaff,
Aye.
and Malinowski is no. So the motion does not carry. Are there any other motions related to South Union? Lisa, I know you'll do this, but for benefit of the committee, I'm sure, obviously we'll be there, because it'll be part of the same discussion as the FY22 to the extent people join. But obviously, I think this was a good conversation, right? And I know most of your board tends to watch these meetings anyways, so.
Yep.
The only thing I could think of, should we put something out there that the town will commit to finding a location for the playground, or is that just kind of assumed given the cost has already been incurred for the playground materials and it's inevitable it's gonna happen for those outside of town?
Sorry, Jeff. So I know we had a brief discussion at the last Board of Selectmen meeting on the park that's going in downtown. And one of the suggestions was, well, maybe to bring the playground from the south side. And there wasn't support from the board to do that for just that reason. It was, I think there was, we didn't take an official vote, but I think the consensus was that, you know, a playground staying on the south side of town. And I know Ms. Malinowski made a compelling case that it is the only fenced playground as well. So I think it was a pretty compelling case, and I think, you know, that the message was there. Jeff, that to me, I don't think that's going to be a concern. If
Okay.
if
No,
something
thank
does
you.
sell, it will be relocated.
I do think, Jeff, though, if the board moves forward with this recommendation and then Mark starts his process, that you have just volunteered yourself as part of the capital planning committee to work with Lisa probably to figure that out based on the town-owned parcels.
I would love to. Sounds-
Yep, happy to do it. Absolutely.
All right.
I have seen like schools dispositions in which part of the bid was that the developer had to relocate a playground or build a playground someplace else. I have seen that, so I don't know. But
I know I have in writing, I'll have to find it, from Tim Davis, that he feels confident that, you know, labor aside, that the playground structure that's there can easily be moved to another location. So it would just be the labor, I think, we're looking at.
Okay.
All right. Almost there. Capital project oversight. I would like to get this done, if everyone can bear with me for like 5 more minutes. It's been on the agenda a lot and we keep punting it because I always have it at the end. And I probably should just put it at the beginning. We talked about this a lot. Everyone asked for a lot of details from Carla. The details are now there. We will obviously have projects, assuming town meeting funding, that we'll certainly want to work through next year for FY22 as a test of our plan. My question now to you is, was there any projects in the current pipeline where there still is funding and potential dollars to be spent that we want to submit a request to the Board of Selectmen to be involved in the oversight to kind of test what a process would look like? They don't have to grant it based on our charge, but I think it starts with a request.
Can we just list the ones we think might fit that category real quick, the big ones?
Let me
Okay.
open the document. So
Projects,
what'd you say?
the light projects.
Yeah, I think the fin boiler's done. So even though there's a large balance here, that's, I think, an accounting, you know, between the school budget and then the only non-CPA related one is the fire pumper, but that's a vehicle that's already been purchased. It's already being manufactured, so not sure whether the vehicles like that are the right intent for oversight, but B, I think it's too late for involvement. So I think it's the light projects for both Finn, so Richardson Tennis Courts and Mooney Field. And then Lisa had previously raised golf course. And I thought about the library, but it's way too late. And I'll be honest, they have a phenomenal owner's project manager working on that. It was one of the actually project managers we interviewed for the public safety building. They're on top of that. So
They're
think
almost
that's
done
good
too.
advice.
They're
right. Well,
almost
that's what I'm saying. It's too late, but they also, I'm very confident that they're getting good advice from who they hired as well. So it's really the lights, golf course, or nothing. And then bring up golf course because I know Lisa had previously mentioned it in the last meeting.
Lisa's a golf course, the putting green?
It is the putting green, but actually Mark and I had a discussion on it today, and I think there's a path that's, again, I don't want to speak for you, Mark, as far as conversations you may or may not have had with CPC. As far as oversight, I believe you have that covered through the architect.
Yeah, so I'm waiting on CPC just to say they're willing to spend the remaining funds. I've got a proposal from the architect for design, for bidding, and for construction oversight, which he provided on the last renovation work that was done on the 9th green and the first tee box. So But I'm just waiting for CPC to green light that they're willing to do, they're willing to expend the remainder of the funds, because it's going to take probably just about all of them.
Yeah, so I don't know that the golf is,
Yeah.
yeah,
So
Yeah,
it's the
not like-
light,
And I
it's the
don't
light
like,
projects.
I think the lights are not good ones for you either. So I think maybe we focus on the things that we've really vetted, the fiscal year 22 ones, and I would start with Calendar Field.
that's a good one, Kathy.
Yeah, I think obviously the townhouse will fall into that if that gets approved as well.
But isn't that going to have an OPM?
Still doesn't mean they don't need oversight. I mean, that's something we can discuss in the future if it gets approved. I mean, our OPM on the public safety building needed some oversight. Right, Mark?
Yeah,
Yeah, like you still remember their phone numbers, right?
yeah. Well, like I said, there was a lot, there were certain components other than the OPM of our management team, so to speak, Jason, I think that needed some oversight, but.
Yeah. I mean, we got to remember the
hour's
OPM.
getting late.
Yeah, the OPM needs help, right, from people within the town too to effectuate some of their stuff. So unless anyone speaks now, we're going to wait until after town meeting, and nothing. We'll work on a process in between, but we will not work on any actual projects.
One question, does Calander already have some oversight from rec? Or would it?
Yes.
Yep. It would.
But there's been so many reports that people have, questioned, and we've got contradictory reports. This is one that I really hope goes right. So I think the more oversight, the better.
All right. I apologize to do this, but Lisa, you made a comment under the standing committee language town meeting that I wrote down, but we never came back to. You said something about CPA, which you just triggered. Can you just expand on that so I make sure, like, were you saying oversight over CPA projects?
Well, to have some language, if you look on the last page, it talks about in the absence of a formal building committee for a specific project,
Mhm.
that we could serve as a point of initial approval for all project expenses, change orders, etc. Projects falling under the oversight of the CIPC will specifically be decided as part of or immediately following any town meeting appropriation by a vote of the Board of Selectmen, but the Board of Selectmen have no oversight or say on CPC. So I'm wondering if there's a way to incorporate some language that, we just talked about Calander. We it's really not up to the Board of Selectmen whether, this committee has any oversight on it. It's a CPC, more of a CPC question. So I just didn't see that there was language there that allowed us to be able to offer or, potentially have the opportunity to do oversight on CPC.
And I was thinking the policy would cover that,
Okay,
but I hear you, right? The Board of Selectmen really doesn't have the authority. Oh, you're the appointing authority for that committee, right? But it's similar to rec though, right? Technically the rec commission will run their projects, right? But
Yep.
It's meant to be collaborative in nature, right? So whether let's everyone think about that comment from Lisa and whether we add a sentence into the charge next week versus rely on the policy as in the question at hand.
Jason, the only thing to consider, given my experience with CPC and articles, and I'm happy for Lisa to correct me, is that any wording regarding a specific project, whether, there was a little bit of a kerfuffle a number of years ago about inserting the finance director into the article as to having some oversight, which he's required to do. I'm thinking that CPC would probably, if it's going to be for a specific project, would push to have it in the motion for the article, and that may be where the discussion is, not in any bylaw.
I really like that idea. I don't know what others think, but I think
Yeah.
that
I'm just saying that's the path that really has kind of been CPC has agreed to do, but the things that are specific have been included in the motions of the articles themselves.
that makes a lot of sense.
So I'm a little lost here. You're saying that the specific article a few years ago, there was discussion whether the finance director could oversee whatever the CPC project was.
Brian, do you want to help me on this one?
No, it was just regarding
What do you mean?
bonding. It was specific to bonding projects. And it was Aldo's, it was actually Mr. Cipriano's suggestion. And yeah, there was a little bit of a kerfuffle over it.
So just to add your ability to be part of the bonding process.
Yeah.
But then a minute ago, we say that we'd like to possibly have the facade, the townhouse facade, be one of the projects that we oversee.
So then this goes to wording. I think this is a topic for discussion with the board next week, Lisa,
Yeah, I agree.
right?
I
Because,
agree.
and see, because ultimately they'll come before you for a vote at some point, and it's meant to be collaborative. It's not meant to be a power struggle, but it's also meant to bring the right expertise. And I think a good subsection of this committee has the expertise on some of these things, right? Everyone will have different wheelhouses. We can just see it in the discussion tonight, right? Of where certain people would better serve for some projects than others.
Agreed.
All right. Before I go to public comment, landing point. So I'll post a meeting with Board of Selectmen for next Tuesday. Mark will let us know where we fall on the agenda once he works on that. To approve a presentation and to finalize the language of standing committee, I'm thinking it's less than 30 minutes, but someone can challenge me. Do we want to try for a early morning later in the week or next Monday night or next Monday morning? If we agree to a half an hour,
I'm unavailable Monday morning.
okay?
We're trying to get this done before the Board of Selectmen meeting. That's the purpose of this.
Unless you just want me to do my own presentation with no vote on the committee. I always like to have a vote before I present something.
But if everybody can meet Monday morning, it's fine, even if I'm not available, as long as you have a quorum, Jason.
So
Or
the purpose is it's literally to approve your presentation.
and approve the one sentence I need to add about advisory and BOS representation in this charge. That's it.
And to vote on servers, right?
Yes. And I think we'll table Newton Street to our next formal meeting. I think that's too much to add in at that point. So I'm thinking the server conversation is the only one that really hopefully will require a conversation other than typos or content I'm just taking from the minutes from tonight.
But are you going to give us the presentation ahead of time so we can look at it?
I have to. Yeah, I'm not going to walk through onto the screen.
Well, I just
Yeah.
want to make sure. So
Yeah.
you're going to post it so we can look at it, and then we're going to come to the meeting on Monday with any recommended changes. That's what you want?
Yeah, just we did that. We've done it a few times now.
All right, we'll talk about the servers, and then what are we doing with the advisory BOS language as far as the committee? The standing
I think we were going to keep it at 7, but we agreed that 1 seat would be filled, but no more than 1 by 1 BOS member and 1 advisory member. Is I
committee?
thought
What are
that
we doing on Monday morning with that?
I need to phrase it and get it in this standing language so we can vote and make a recommendation to BOS. The goal is not to go back to BOS before town meeting on anything capital related.
So Monday morning, what time?
Well, so I'll throw 3 options. Friday morning at 7:30, yay or nay? Monday morning, 7:30 a.m. or Monday evening, 7:30 p.m. And we'll agree to 30 minutes or less, regardless of the time. So I heard Lisa can't do Monday morning. Does anyone else have any others in there that they cannot do?
I'm very iffy on Monday morning, so I'd rather do Friday morning.
I think I prefer Monday evening, but does that give you enough time, Jason? With Tuesday is the selectman, right?
Yeah, so if everyone's good with Friday morning, let's do that because then it allows Mark to include it in either the initial packet or supplemental packet that goes out to the public.
I can do Friday.
That works.
All
If
right,
I put a Zoom background in it, can you not see if I'm driving or anything?
you can just dial in. You don't have to be on video.
Okay.
Yeah.
We just need to record your vote.
No problem.
All right, public comment? Seeing none. Any other business?
What time is the Friday meeting?
7:30 a.m. unless someone has another proposed time.
That's good.
All right, I will move that we adjourn. Is there a second?
Second.
Any further discussion? All right, roll call. Braccio,
Aye.
Cook,
Aye.
Hark,
Aye.
Hinterneeder,
Aye.
Palmer,
Aye.
Bath,
Aye.
and Malinowski.